They say the weakest wolves die first. Tonight, I was supposed to prove them right. My name is Elena Voss, and this is the story of how I went from being the most rejected wolf in Iron Hollow to claiming a fate no one saw coming, least of all me. It's a story of blood, betrayal, and the brutal truth that sometimes survival isn't about being the strongest. It's about refusing to stay down. If you want to know how a forgotten runt became something the entire werewolf world had to reckon with, stay until the end. And hey, drop a comment with your city. I want to know where the February wind cut through Iron Hollow like a blade through flesh, and Elena Voss stood at the edge of the ceremony ground trying not to shiver. Not from cold, though the temperature had dropped below freezing, but from the weight of every eye that swept past her without stopping. 23 years old, 5 claiming ceremonies. 0 mates. The math was simple, and in the world of the packs, math like that meant only one thing: defective. She's back again, someone muttered behind her. A young female, probably 16, already mated last year to a mid-tier beta. Doesn't she get tired of the humiliation? Some people don't know when to quit, another voice answered. My mom says she should just accept Omega status and be done with it. Elena kept her eyes forward, her jaw tight. She'd learned years ago that responding only made it worse. The wolves who mattered didn't need to whisper. They simply didn't see her at all. The ceremony ground was a natural amphitheater carved into the mountainside, surrounded by ancient pines that had witnessed 1,000 of these gatherings. Torches burned in iron brackets driven into the stone, casting dancing shadows across the assembled wolves. At the center stood the claiming stone, a massive boulder worn smooth by centuries of tradition, dark with old bloodstains that never quite washed away. Alpha Marcus Thorne stood beside it, his silver-shot hair gleaming in the firelight. He was broad-shouldered and commanding, the kind of leader who ruled through presence rather than words. His mate, Luna Catherine, stood at his side, beautiful and cold as winter itself. Tonight, Marcus's voice rolled across the gathering. We honor the old ways. When the moon rises, those who have come of age will stand before the stone. Those who are called will step forward. Those who are chosen will be claimed. Elena had heard these words 5 times before. Each time she'd stood among the unclaimed females, hope and dread warring in her chest. Each time she'd watched alpha after alpha step forward and walk right past her. It wasn't that she was ugly. She knew objectively that she wasn't. Dark hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, gray eyes that her mother had once called storm-touched, a slim build that would have been called delicate in human terms. But delicate meant weak in pack terms, and weak meant unwanted. The worst part wasn't the rejection itself. It was the pity. Elena. The voice made her turn. Sarah Chen, one of the few wolves who still spoke to her with something resembling kindness, stood a few feet away. She'd been claimed 3 years ago by a beta named Marcus, not the alpha, just a warrior with the same common name. You don't have to do this again. Yeah, I do. Why? Sarah's dark eyes were genuinely confused. Everyone knows no one's going to claim you. You could just, I don't know, leave, go live with humans. Some wolves do that. And spend the rest of my life pretending I'm something I'm not? Elena shook her head. I'd rather face the truth. The truth is cruel. The truth is the truth. Doesn't change based on whether I look at it or not. Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but the drums started, deep, resonant beats that seemed to come from the earth itself. The ceremony was beginning. The unclaimed females were called forward first, 12 of them this year, ranging from 18 to Elena's 23. They formed a line in front of the claiming stone, each trying to look confident and desirable and strong. Elena took her place at the end, as always. No point in pretending she belonged anywhere else. The males came next. 20 of them, all unmated, all looking to claim. They ranged from young warriors fresh off their trials to established betas looking for a second chance after losing a mate. Each one walked past the line of females, scenting the air, looking for the pull that meant compatibility. One by one, pairs formed. A young alpha named Derek claimed a female called Jessica. There were actual gasps from the crowd at that pairing, since Jessica was the daughter of a council member. 2 betas claimed sisters, which started a brief argument about tradition until Marcus shut it down with a look. Elena watched it all with the detachment of someone who'd seen the same play too many times. She knew how it would end. They all did. But she stayed. Because leaving would mean admitting defeat, and she wasn't ready for that. Not yet. "Look at her," a voice said, not even bothering to whisper anymore. "Still standing there like she has a chance. It's sad, really. It's pathetic." Elena's fingers curled into fists at her sides, but she kept her face blank. "Don't react. Don't give them the satisfaction." The pairings continued until only 3 females remained. Elena, a young wolf named Carrie, who was clearly terrified, and an older woman named Beth, who'd been standing at these ceremonies for almost a decade. The unmated males had dwindled to 5. None of them were looking at the remaining females with any interest. Marcus cleared his throat. "Any final claims?" Silence. "Then Wait!" The word cut through the ceremony ground like a gunshot. Every head turned toward the tree line, where the shadows seemed to have grown suddenly deeper. Elena felt it before she saw him. A pressure in the air, a weight that made her wolf want to either bow or bolt. Power. Raw, undiluted alpha power that made Marcus look like a pretender to the throne. He stepped out of the darkness like he'd been carved from it. Massive didn't quite cover it. The alpha was easily 6'5", broad-shouldered, and thick with muscle that spoke of violence survived rather than gym time logged. His hair was dark, long enough to brush his shoulders, and his face bore a roadmap of scars, a white line across his left cheekbone, another through his eyebrow, a third that disappeared into his hairline. His eyes were pale, almost colorless in the firelight, and when they swept across the ceremony ground, people flinched. He wore the clothes of the mountain packs, rough leather and dark fabric, practical and worn. At his hip hung a blade that was more like a short sword, and Elena could smell old blood on it even from 30 feet away. Cale Draven. Marcus's voice was carefully neutral, but Elena could hear the tension beneath it. "This is unexpected." "Is it?" The newcomer's voice was a low rumble, the kind that you felt in your chest. "The claiming ceremony is open to all unmated alphas. Or has Iron Hollow changed the old laws?" "No, but then I'm here to claim." A ripple went through the crowd. Elena heard the whispers starting, but she couldn't make out the words. Her heart was hammering in her chest for reasons she didn't understand. Cale Draven. She'd heard that name before. Everyone had. The Night Fang Pack, the wild ones, the dangerous ones, the wolves who lived in the deep mountains where the old ways still held, and civilization was just a word. They raided, they hunted, they survived in conditions that would kill softer wolves, and their alpha had just walked into an Iron Hollow ceremony. Marcus recovered his composure quickly. "The remaining females are before you. Choose, if you will." Cale's pale eyes swept over Carrie, who actually took a step back. Then Beth, who stood her ground but looked like she wanted to run. Then he looked at Elena. The world seemed to narrow to just that gaze. Those colorless eyes locked onto hers, and Elena felt something click in her chest. Not the mate bond, nothing so gentle or romantic, but a recognition. Predator seeing prey. Hunter spotting quarry. He started walking toward her. "No way," someone breathed. "He's not. He is." Cale stopped in front of Elena. Up close, he was even more terrifying. She had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes, and every instinct in her body was screaming at her to submit, to lower her gaze, to show throat. She didn't. "You're unclaimed," he said. Not a question. "Yes." Her voice came out steadier than she'd expected. "Weak?" The word hit like a slap, but she forced herself to answer. "Physically, yes." "Coward?" "No." Something that might have been amusement flickered in those pale eyes. "We'll see." He turned to face Marcus. "I claim this female. Elena Voss, is it?" The use of her name, the fact that he knew her name, sent another shock through the crowd. Marcus looked like he'd swallowed something bitter. "Elena, do you accept?" This was it. The moment she'd fantasized about for 5 years. Being chosen, being wanted, being seen. But not like this. Never like this. Every fiber of her being said this was wrong. Cale Draven wasn't offering her a future. He was offering her a different kind of hell. The Night Fang Pack was brutal, unforgiving, a place where weak wolves didn't last. She should refuse. She should take Omega status, live quietly, survive. But surviving wasn't living, and she was so damn tired of being invisible. I need to know one thing first, she said, and the fact that she was making demands of an alpha like Cale Draven made several people gasp. Why me? Does it matter? Yes. Cale studied her for a long moment. Then, I need a mate. The old laws say I can't lead without one. You need to be claimed before they force you into Omega status. We both get what we need. Brutal honesty. No pretense of romance or destiny or any of the lies other alphas told. So it's a transaction, Elena said. Everything is a transaction. At least I'm honest about it. She should say no. Any sane person would say no. I accept. The words were out before she could second-guess them. The moment they left her mouth, she saw Marcus's expression shift from shock to something like relief, getting rid of a problem, and Luna Catherine's lips curve in a smile that held no warmth. Cale reached out and took her wrist. His hand was huge, scarred, rough with calluses. Then you're mine. He turned and started walking toward the tree line, pulling her with him. Elena stumbled, caught herself, kept moving. Behind her, the ceremony ground erupted in whispers. She's insane. She'll be dead in a week. Did you see his face? He's going to destroy her. Sarah's voice cut through the others. Elena, don't do this. But Elena didn't look back. She kept her eyes forward, on the dark mountains ahead, and tried not to think about what she'd just agreed to. They reached the edge of the tree line when Cale finally stopped and looked at her. Really looked at her, those pale eyes assessing. You have 5 minutes to say goodbye to whatever life you had here, he said. After that, you're Nightfang. There's no going back. I don't need 5 minutes. No friends? No family? My parents are dead, and friends. She thought of Sarah, of the few people who'd shown her kindness over the years. They're better off without me. Cale studied her face. You believe that. I know that. I'm the weak link, the one who makes the whole pack look bad just by existing. They'll be relieved I'm gone. He released her wrist. You can still change your mind. Accept Omega status. Live small and safe. Why are you giving me an out? I accepted the claim. Because once we cross into Nightfang territory, there are no more outs. You're mine until death or rejection, and I don't believe in rejection. Elena looked back at the ceremony ground one last time. She could see the wolves gathered there, see the torches burning, see the life she'd tried and failed to be part of for 23 years. Then she looked at Kyle, at the scars, the cold eyes, the absolute certainty of violence that hung around him like a cloak. I'm ready. No, you're not. He started walking again. But you will be. Iku. The journey into Nightfang territory took 3 hours on foot, moving through forests so dense that the moonlight barely penetrated. Kyle set a brutal pace, and Elena had to jog to keep up with his long strides. He didn't slow down for her, didn't check to see if she was following, just moved through the darkness like he could see perfectly, which she realized he probably could. Her legs were burning by the time they reached the border. She knew it was the border because the forest changed. The trees grew taller, wilder, their branches tangled overhead in patterns that looked almost intentional. The air felt different, heavier, charged with something Elena couldn't name. Kyle stopped at a stream and finally looked back at her. This is the line. Cross it. You're Nightfang. No exceptions. No mercy. Elena's lungs were screaming, her calves cramping, but she forced herself to stand straight. I understand. Do you? He crossed his arms. Iron Hollow is soft. They care about hierarchy and tradition and all the pretty lies that let weak wolves survive. Nightfang doesn't. We care about one thing, strength. Can you hunt? Can you fight? Can you survive when the mountain tries to kill you? I don't know. Honest answer. Good. He gestured at the stream. Cross or turn back? Choose now. Elena looked at the water, crystal clear, moving fast over smooth stones. It was maybe 6 feet wide, an easy jump for a wolf in good shape. She'd never been in good shape, but she'd also never been a quitter. She backed up 3 steps, then ran and jumped. For one glorious second, she thought she'd make it. Then her foot slipped on wet stone, and she went down hard in the middle of the stream. Freezing water soaked through her clothes instantly, and the current tried to drag her downstream. She scrambled up, sputtering and furious with herself. When she looked up, she expected to see Kyle laughing, or disappointed, or disgusted. Instead, his expression was unreadable. "You fell." "I noticed." "But you crossed." She looked down. She was on the far bank, technically. "Yeah." "Then you're Night Fang now." He turned and started walking again. "Keep up. We've got 2 more hours before we reach the pack." Elena wrung out her hair and followed, water squelching in her boots with every step. The second leg of the journey was worse than the first. Her wet clothes clung to her skin, the temperature dropped, and the terrain grew rougher. Kale led her up steep inclines, across narrow ledges, through thorny underbrush that tore at her sleeves. She fell twice. Both times she got up without asking for help. Both times Kyle didn't offer any. By the time they reached Night Fang territory proper, Elena was running on spite alone. The pack's settlement wasn't what she'd expected. No neat houses, no organized streets. Instead, there were structures built into the mountain itself. Caves modified with wooden walls, platforms built high in the trees, shelters dug into the earth and reinforced with stone. It looked less like a village and more like a fortress designed by wolves who expected attack at any moment. Kyle led her to the largest cave entrance. Inside, a fire burned in a central pit, and a dozen wolves lounged around it. They looked up as Kyle entered, and their eyes tracked to Elena. The silence was immediate and absolute. "This is Elena Voss. Hier das, Kale said flatly. "My mate. She's Night Fang now." A massive male with red hair and a beard stood up. "That scrawny thing? You claimed that?" "I did." "Why?" A female with short dark hair and a scar across her throat spoke up. "She looks like she'd blow over in a strong wind." "My reasons are my own, Vera." Vera's eyes narrowed. "The old laws say a mate must be worthy of the alpha. She doesn't look worthy of a runt omega." Elena felt the insult like a physical blow, but she kept her face neutral. "Don't react. Don't show weakness." "The old laws say I choose my mate," Kyle countered. "And I've chosen. Anyone want to challenge that?" The red-haired male took a step forward. "Maybe." "Then challenge, Garrett, right now." The temperature in the cave seemed to drop. Garrett stared at Kale for a long moment, then slowly sat back down. "Not tonight." "Smart." Kale looked around the cave. "Elena will undergo trials like any outsider. If she passes, she stays. If she fails," he shrugged, "then she fails." "And if she dies?" Vera asked. "Then she dies." Elena's stomach dropped. She'd expected it to be hard. She hadn't expected it to be potentially fatal. Kyle finally looked at her. "There's a shelter in the back. You can sleep there tonight. Trials start at dawn." "What trials?" "You'll find out tomorrow." He turned away. "Oh, and Elena? Welcome to Night Fang." The wolves around the fire started laughing. Not kind laughter, the kind that said they were already imagining her failure. Elena made her way to the shelter Kyle had indicated, a small alcove carved into the cave wall, barely big enough for a bedroll. Someone had left a thin blanket there. No pillow. No amenities. She sat down on the hard stone, her wet clothes still clinging to her skin, her body aching from the journey, and tried to process what she'd just done. She'd left everything she knew for this, for a pack that already despised her, for an alpha who saw her as a necessary inconvenience, for trials that might kill her. "Smart choice, Elena," she muttered to herself. "Real smart." But even as she said it, even as she shivered in the cold and tried not to think about tomorrow, a small part of her felt something unexpected. Alive. For the first time in 5 years, she felt alive. Dawn came too early. Elena woke to the sound of voices and movement outside her alcove. Her clothes had dried overnight, but they were stiff and uncomfortable. Her body hurt in places she didn't know could hurt. She forced herself up and out of the shelter. The main cave was bustling with wolves preparing for the day. Most of them ignored her. A few gave her looks that ranged from curious to hostile. Kyle stood near the cave entrance, talking to Vera and Garrett. He saw Elena and gestured her over. Your first trial is combat, he said without preamble. You'll fight Mara. Who's Mara? A young female stepped forward from the crowd. She was maybe 19, lean and muscled, with blonde hair pulled back in a braid. She gave Elena a smile that was all teeth. I am, and I'm going to enjoy this. Combat to what? Elena asked. First blood? Submission? Until Mara says you've had enough, Kyle replied. Or until you can't get up anymore. That's not a fair fight. No, Kyle agreed, it's not. But Nightfang doesn't do fair. We do real. He led them outside to a clearing surrounded by watching wolves. Someone had marked out a rough circle in the dirt. Mara was already stretching, loosening her shoulders. Elena tried to remember everything her father had taught her about fighting before he died. Keep your guard up. Watch the eyes. Don't telegraph your moves. It wouldn't be enough. She knew that. Mara was trained, conditioned, strong. Elena was none of those things. But she stepped into the circle anyway. Begin, Kyle said. Mara moved like lightning. 1 second, she was across the circle. The next, her fist was connecting with Elena's ribs. Pain exploded through Elena's side, and she stumbled back. Keep your guard up. Mara came in again, this time with a kick aimed at Elena's knee. Elena managed to dodge, barely, and tried to counter with a punch. Mara blocked it effortlessly and landed another hit to Elena's stomach. The air rushed out of Elena's lungs. She gasped, trying to breathe, and Mara used the moment to sweep her legs. Elena went down hard on her back. Watch the eyes. She rolled away just as Mara's boot came down where her head had been. She scrambled to her feet, her vision swimming. Come on, outsider, Mara taunted. Show us what Iron Hollow taught you. Elena tried to set her stance, tried to remember the forms, tried to be strategic. Mara didn't give her time. The next exchange was a flurry of hits that Elena couldn't block or dodge. Fist to her face, elbow to her shoulder, knee to her thigh. She went down again. Stay down, someone in the crowd called. Save yourself the trouble. Elena pushed herself up. Her lip was bleeding. Her ribs screamed in protest. Don't telegraph your moves. She watched Mara approach, saw the contempt in the younger wolf's eyes, saw the way she was already relaxing, already certain of victory. Elena waited until Mara was close, then lunged, not with a punch or a kick, but with all her weight aimed at Mara's center of mass. It was a desperate, clumsy move. But it worked. They both went down in a tangle. Elena managed to get one good hit in, a wild swing that connected with Mara's cheek, before Mara recovered and pinned her. Nice try, Mara hissed. Then she hit Elena 3 times in rapid succession. Face, ribs, face again. Elena's world went dark around the edges. She could taste blood, could feel her consciousness starting to slip. That's enough. Kale's voice cut through the haze. Elena felt Mara's weight lift off her, felt hands pulling her up. She blinked, trying to focus. Kale stood in front of her, his expression unreadable. You lost, he said. I know. But you got up every time. Elena swayed on her feet. Didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. You could have stayed down. He turned to the crowd. First trial complete. She failed the combat, but she showed she won't quit. We'll see if that's enough. He walked away, leaving Elena standing in the circle, blood dripping from her split lip, her body screaming in pain. Vera approached and handed her a cloth. For your face. Elena took it, surprised by the gesture. Thanks. Don't thank me yet. Combat is the easy trial. Vera's scarred smile was almost pitying. Tomorrow is knowledge, and you don't look like you know much about surviving up here. She walked away, and Elena was left alone in the clearing, the wolves dispersing around her. She'd passed, barely, by the absolute minimum margin. 1 trial down, 2 to go. And if Vera was right, the worst was still ahead. Elena spent the rest of that day trying not to move. Every breath sent sharp pains through her ribs where Mara's fists had connected. Her left eye had swollen nearly shut, and the split in her lip reopened every time she tried to eat. No one offered help. A few wolves watched her struggle to carry water from the stream, their faces blank with indifference. When she stumbled and nearly dropped the bucket, someone laughed. Your entertainment, a grizzled male said as he passed. His name was Torben, she'd learned. The pack's betting on how long you last. Most give you 3 days. I'm more generous. I said 5. Thanks for the vote of confidence. Wasn't confidence, just odds. He kept walking. Elena made it back to her alcove and collapsed on the bedroll. Through the stone walls, she could hear wolves talking, laughing, living their lives. None of those lives included her. She must have dozed off despite the pain, because the next thing she knew, someone was shaking her shoulder. She jerked awake, instinctively raising her arms to protect her face. Easy. Vera stood over her, holding a small clay pot. I'm not here to hit you. Elena lowered her arms slowly. What do you want? To see if you're stupid or just ignorant. Vera crouched down and opened the pot. Inside was a pale green paste that smelled like pine and something sharper. This'll help with the swelling, won't make the pain go away, but it'll keep the bruising from getting worse. Why are you helping me? I'm not helping you. I'm protecting the pack's investment. Vera's tone was matter-of-fact. Kael claimed you. That makes you Nightfang property, even if you're worthless property, and we don't let our property break before we're done with it. The words should have stung, but Elena was too tired to care. She took the pot. How do I use it? You're asking me? Vera's scarred eyebrow rose. You really don't know anything, do you? I know plenty, just not about whatever mountain medicine this is. Vera snorted. City wolves, useless. She took the pot back and scooped out some of the paste. Face first, don't flinch, it's going to burn. She wasn't kidding. The moment the paste touched Elena's bruised cheek, it felt like liquid fire. Elena hissed through her teeth but held still. There, Vera handed the pot back. Use it on the ribs too, and drink willow bark tea if you can stomach it. Helps with the pain. Where do I get willow bark? The forest. Where else? Vera stood up. Tomorrow's trial is knowledge. You'll be tested on plants, tracking, territory markers, pack law, everything you need to survive up here. Study tonight if you want any chance of passing. Study what? I don't have any books or... Then ask questions. Find wolves who'll talk to you. Vera paused at the alcove entrance. Or don't. Either way, dawn comes whether you're ready or not. She left, and Elena was alone again with her pain and the clay pot of medicine. Study. Right. Because everyone here was just dying to teach the weak outsider pack secrets. But Vera had a point. If she failed this next trial, Kael might decide she wasn't worth keeping. And then what? She couldn't go back to Iron Hollow. She'd burned that bridge the moment she accepted the claim. She forced herself up, applied more of the paste to her ribs, gritting her teeth through the burning, and made her way out of the alcove. The main cave was less crowded now. Most wolves were out hunting or patrolling or doing whatever Nightfang wolves did. A few sat around the fire, working on weapons or mending gear. Elena approached the closest one, a middle-aged female sharpening a knife. Can I ask you something? The female didn't look up. No. I just need to know, Bets. I said no. The female's voice was flat. You're an outsider. I don't teach outsiders. Elena tried 3 more wolves, got 3 more rejections. The 4th one, a young male who couldn't have been more than 20, at least had the decency to explain. Look, it's not personal, he said, keeping his voice low. But if we help you and you fail anyway, we look weak, like we wasted time on someone who wasn't worth it. And if I pass? You won't. No offense, but you're... He gestured vaguely at her. You're not built for this. Best thing you can do is accept it and ask Kael to release you from the claim. He said he doesn't believe in rejection. The young male winced. Then you're screwed. Sorry. He walked away, leaving Elena standing alone by the fire. This was impossible. She couldn't pass a knowledge trial without knowledge, and no one would give her the information she needed. It was designed for her to fail. You're going about this wrong. Elena turned. An old female sat in the shadows at the edge of the cave, so still Elena hadn't noticed her. She was tiny, her hair white as snow, her face a map of wrinkles. But her eyes were sharp and clear. What do you mean? Elena asked. You're asking them to teach you pack secrets. Of course they're refusing. The old female gestured to a spot beside her. Sit. You're making my neck hurt, looming like that. Elena sat. If asking is wrong, what should I be doing? Listening. The old female poked the fire with a stick. Wolves talk. They gossip. They brag. You want to know about plants? Listen to the healers complain about which ones are hard to find. Want to know territory markers? Listen to the patrol wolves argue about boundary disputes. Pack law? The council members can't shut up about it. It was so simple, Elena almost laughed. Just listen. Just listen. But you have to actually hear what they're saying. Not just the words, the meaning behind them. The old female studied Elena with those sharp eyes. You're from Iron Hollow. Soft pack. They probably taught you to ask permission for everything. Pretty much. That won't work here. Nightfang wolves don't ask. We take. We watch. We learn by doing, not by being told. She poked the fire again. You want to survive the knowledge trial? Stop trying to be a good student. Start being a thief. Why are you telling me this? The old female's smile showed more gaps than teeth. Because I'm old enough not to care what the pack thinks. And because you remind me of someone. Who? Myself, 60 years ago. She stood up with a grunt. I was an outsider too. Took me 3 tries to pass the trials, and I lost an ear in the process. She turned her head, showing where her left ear was nothing but a scarred nub. But I passed, and I'm still here. She shuffled away into the darkness of the cave, leaving Elena with more hope than she'd had in hours. The old female was right. Elena spent the rest of the evening doing exactly what she'd been told, listening. Not obviously, not drawing attention, just sitting near groups of wolves and absorbing their conversations. She learned that bloodroot grew near streams and could stop bleeding, that the Northern Territory marker was a lightning-struck pine with claw marks at shoulder height. That pack law said any wolf could challenge for rank, but only during the full moon. None of it stuck easily. Her head felt like it was going to explode from trying to remember everything, but she kept listening, kept cataloging, kept storing away every scrap of information like her life depended on it. Because it did. Kael appeared sometime after dark. Elena hadn't seen him all day, but suddenly he was there, standing at the cave entrance with snow dusting his shoulders. His eyes found her across the fire, and he jerked his head toward the outside. Elena followed him out into the cold night. The moon was nearly full, casting silver light across the mountain peaks. How are the ribs? Kael asked, without looking at her. Fine. Liar. He turned. Mara pulled her punches. If she'd actually tried, you'd have broken bones. Elena's hands curled into fists. So that was mercy? That was her testing to see if you'd quit. You didn't. He crossed his arms. Tomorrow is knowledge. Vera will be your examiner. She won't go easy on you. I'm starting to realize nothing here is easy. Good. You're learning. He was quiet for a moment, his pale eyes fixed on the distant mountains. You asked me why I claimed you. You said it was because you needed a mate for the old laws. That's true, but not the whole truth. He glanced at her. 5 years you stood at those ceremonies. 5 years of rejection. Most wolves would have accepted Omega status after the 2nd year. You didn't. Stubborn, I guess. Stubborn. Or something else. He turned to face her fully. I claimed you because I need a mate who won't break when things get hard. And up here, things are always hard. I don't need someone strong. I have plenty of strong wolves. I need someone who won't quit. Elena stared at him. You're betting I won't quit. Yes. What if you're wrong? Then you fail the trials and I find another mate. Simple. He started to walk away, then paused. But I don't think I'm wrong. You jumped that stream even though you knew you'd fall. You got up every time Mara knocked you down. You're still here asking questions, trying to learn. That's not strength, that's just refusing to stay down, Kael interrupted. Which is the only kind of strength that matters up here. Remember that tomorrow. He disappeared into the darkness, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts and the cold mountain wind. She didn't sleep much that night. Kept going over everything she'd learned, testing herself, trying to burn it into memory. When dawn finally came, she was exhausted, but as prepared as she could be. Vera met her outside the cave. Knowledge trial, follow me. They walked into the forest, just the two of them. Vera moved with the confidence of someone who could navigate these mountains blind, while Elena struggled to keep up on the uneven terrain. After about 20 minutes, Vera stopped in a small clearing. First question, what plant stops bleeding? Elena's mind raced. Bloodroot. Where does it grow? Near streams. How do you identify it? That one she didn't know. Hadn't heard anyone mention it. I don't know. Vera's expression didn't change. Red sap when you break the stem. Remember that. She pointed at a cluster of plants at the base of a tree. What's that? Elena studied them. The leaves were distinctive, saw-toothed edges, growing in pairs. She'd heard two healers arguing about these last night. Devil's bite, used for infections. How do you prepare it? Another gap in her knowledge. I don't know. Crush the leaves into a paste, mix with hot water, apply to the wound. Vera moved to another plant. This one. Moonbell, poisonous. Symptoms of poisoning? Elena closed her eyes, trying to remember. Someone had mentioned this. One of the young warriors bragging about a hunt gone wrong. Blurred vision, difficulty breathing, seizures. Treatment? Activated charcoal and something else. I can't remember. Honeysuckle tea. Forces you to vomit up the poison. Vera walked deeper into the forest. You're doing better than expected, but knowing the names isn't enough. You need to understand how they work together. The questions continued. Plants, tracking signs, how to read the weather from the clouds, which berries were safe to eat. Elena got maybe half right. The other half she fumbled through or admitted she didn't know. Vera's face remained neutral through it all, giving away nothing. Finally, they reached a section of forest where 3 trees had marks carved into their bark. Different patterns, different depths. Territory markers, Vera said. Tell me what they mean. Elena studied them. The first was deep claw marks, raked vertically. Night Fang territory. The vertical marks mean active patrol zone. The second. This one was 3 horizontal lines. Elena had heard Torben mention these during an argument about boundary disputes. Neutral zone. Shared hunting grounds between Nightfang and the Silverpine pack? Close. Silverpine collapsed 4 years ago. It's Ashclaw now. Vera pointed to the third tree. This one. A single deep gouge, almost a slash with what looked like burns around the edges. Elena had no idea. I don't know. Blood marker. It means a pack member died here defending the territory. This one's old, 15 years at least, but we maintain it out of respect. Vera traced the burned wood with her finger. His name was Calder. He was Kael's father. Elena looked at the mark with new eyes. Kael's father had died right here, fighting to protect Nightfang land. Final question, Vera said. Pack law. If a wolf challenges for rank and loses, what happens? This one Elena knew. She'd heard the council members debating it just last night. They can challenge again at the next full moon, but if they lose twice, they're barred from challenging for a year. And if they challenge the alpha and lose? Elena hesitated. No one had mentioned this specifically. She tried to think it through logically. They're exiled. No, they're executed. Vera's voice was flat. An alpha who can't maintain authority is a dead alpha, and a pack with a weak alpha doesn't survive. So we make the stakes clear. Challenge Kael, you better win, because losing means dying. The cold finality of it made Elena's stomach turn. That's brutal. That's survival. Vera started walking back toward the settlement. You failed the knowledge trial. Elena's heart sank. I answered more than half. More than half isn't good enough. Up here, partial knowledge gets you killed. You need to know, or you need to know you don't know. The dangerous ones are the wolves who think they know, and they're wrong. Vera glanced at her. But you admitted when you didn't know. That counts for something. So I failed? You failed to pass, but you didn't fail to learn. Vera's scarred mouth curved slightly. There's a difference. We'll see what Kael decides. They walked back in silence. Elena's mind was racing, trying to process everything. She'd failed 2 trials out of 2, combat and knowledge. One more trial remained, survival, according to what she'd overheard. And if she failed that, she was done. The settlement came into view, and Elena could see wolves gathered near the main cave. More than usual, something was happening. Kael stood at the center, talking to Garrett and Torben. When he saw Elena and Vera approaching, he raised his hand for silence. "The knowledge trial?" he asked Vera. "Failed, but she knows what she doesn't know. That's worth noting." Kale's pale eyes fixed on Elena. 2 failures. Most wolves would be dismissed by now. Elena lifted her chin. "Then dismiss me." "No." He moved closer. "Because Vera's right. Knowing your limits is knowledge too. And you're learning fast for someone who's only been here 2 days. So what now?" "Now we move to the final trial. Survival." He gestured to the mountains beyond the settlement. "Tomorrow morning, you'll be taken into the deep forest and left alone. No supplies. No help. No contact with the pack. 3 days. If you make it back, you pass." Elena's mouth went dry. "And if I don't make it back? Then you don't make it back." His expression was unreadable. This is the trial that matters most. Combat skills can be taught. Knowledge can be learned. But the will to survive, that's either in you or it isn't. We're about to find out which. Garrett stepped forward. "She'll die in the first night. The deep forest doesn't forgive weakness." "Maybe," Kale acknowledged, "but she's surprised us twice already. Let's see if she can do it again." He turned to Elena. "Tonight, you prepare. Tomorrow at dawn, you go. Any questions?" 100 questions crowded Elena's mind. How far into the forest? What kind of dangers? Were there other predators? But she looked at the watching wolves, at their skeptical faces, their barely concealed contempt, and realized questions would only make her look weaker. "No questions." Kale nodded slowly. "Good. Then get some rest. You'll need it." The crowd dispersed, wolves drifting back to their tasks. Elena made her way to her alcove, her mind spinning. 3 days. Alone. In a forest she didn't know, with skills she barely had. She was going to die. The thought came unbidden, cold and clear. She was going to die out there, and no one would care except maybe as a lesson learned. This is what happens to weak wolves who don't know their place. Elena sat on her bedroll and put her head in her hands. For the first time since arriving at Nightfang, she let herself feel the full weight of her situation, the pain in her ribs, the exhaustion in her bones, the absolute certainty that she was in over her head. "You're spiraling." Elena looked up. The old female from last night stood at the alcove entrance, leaning on a walking stick. "I'm being realistic. Realistic and spiraling look real similar from where I'm standing." The old female hobbled in and sat down with a grunt. "Let me guess. You're thinking about all the ways you're going to die tomorrow." "Pretty much." "Good. That means you're taking it seriously." She pulled something from her pocket, a small leather pouch. "But if you're going to survive, you need to stop thinking about dying and start thinking about living." She opened the pouch and dumped out its contents. A flint, a small blade no bigger than Elena's palm, and a thin coil of wire. "What's this?" "Your survival kit. Technically, I'm not supposed to give you anything, but I'm old and I don't care much for rules anymore." The old female pushed the items toward Elena. "Flint for fire, blade for cutting and defense, wire for traps. Hide them on your body before you leave." Elena stared at the items. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I like you. Because you haven't quit yet. Because—" The old female's voice softened. "Because 60 years ago, someone gave me a knife before my survival trial. I wouldn't have made it without it. Figured I'd pass the favor forward." "Thank you." Elena's throat was tight. "I don't even know your name." "Sigrid, and you're welcome." She stood up, joints creaking. "Now listen close, because I'm only saying this once. The deep forest is dangerous, but it's not random. Predators hunt at dusk and dawn. Streams run downhill, always toward civilization. If you get lost, follow the water. And most important, cold kills faster than hunger. Keep dry, keep warm, keep moving." She paused at the entrance. "You've got something most of these wolves don't, Elena. You've already survived being unwanted for 23 years. That's longer than 3 days in the woods. Remember that when it gets hard." Then she was gone, leaving Elena alone with the survival kit and the crushing weight of what tomorrow would bring. Elena spent the rest of the day preparing. She hid the blade in her boot, the flint in an inner pocket of her jacket, the wire wrapped around her waist under her shirt. Then she went through everything she'd learned, plants, tracking, territory markers, burning it into her memory one more time. As the sun set, she forced herself to eat, even though her stomach was in knots. Energy. She'd need every bit of energy she could get. Kael found her as darkness fell. "Walk with me." They climbed to a ridge overlooking the settlement. From here, Elena could see the sprawl of the deep forest, endless trees stretching toward mountains that disappeared into clouds. "That's where you're going," Kael said, pointing to a particularly dense section. "We'll take you in about 3 miles, then leave you. After that, you're on your own." "How do I prove I survived for 3 days?" "You come back. There's a marker, an old lightning-struck pine with a split trunk. You'll know it when you see it. Make it back to that tree within 3 days and the trial is passed." Elena nodded, trying to memorize the landscape even in the dim light. "You're afraid," Kael observed. "Terrified." "Good. Fear keeps you alert." He turned to look at her. "But don't let it paralyze you. Fear should make you careful, not frozen." "Easy for you to say. You were probably born up here knowing how to survive." "No. I was born in a lowland pack. Came to Nightfang when I was 16 after my birth pack was wiped out by humans." His voice was matter-of-fact, but Elena heard the edge beneath it. "I failed my first survival trial. Took me 2 tries to pass." Elena stared at him. "You failed?" "Badly. Broke my leg on day 2, had to crawl back. Garrett laughed at me for months." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "But I tried again, and the second time I made it." "What changed?" "I stopped trying to survive the way I thought I should and started surviving the only way I could." He looked back at the forest. "You're not a warrior like Mara. You're not a tracker like Vera. You're not built for strength. So stop trying to be those things. Then what should I be?" "Yourself. Small means you can hide better. Weak means you'll take fewer risks. Not knowing everything means you'll be more careful." He met her eyes. "Your weaknesses are only weaknesses if you fight against them. Use them, and they become advantages." It was the longest speech she'd heard from him, and the closest thing to encouragement anyone had offered. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Don't thank me yet. You might still die." But there was something almost gentle in his tone. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow starts early." Elena tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't shut down. Every sound outside the alcove made her jump. Every shadow seemed threatening. Finally, exhausted, she drifted off sometime before dawn. She woke to Vera shaking her shoulder. "Time to go." The sky was still dark as they gathered, Kael, Vera, Garrett, and Elena. No one spoke as they hiked into the forest, the silence broken only by the crunch of snow under their boots. The deep forest was different from the territory around the settlement. The trees grew thicker here, their branches tangling overhead to block out the sky. The underbrush was dense, the ground uneven and treacherous. After about an hour, Kael stopped. "This is the place." Elena looked around. Nothing distinguished this spot from anywhere else they'd passed. Just trees and snow and darkness. 3 days, Kael said. "Starting now." He turned and walked away. Vera and Garrett followed without a word, and then Elena was alone. Completely, utterly alone. The silence pressed in on her, broken only by the whisper of wind through the trees and the distant call of some bird she couldn't identify. 3 days. Elena pulled her jacket tighter and started walking, no destination in mind, just movement to keep the fear at bay. She'd survived 23 years of being unwanted. She could survive 3 days in the woods. She had to. The first few hours were the hardest, not because of physical danger, but because of the crushing weight of isolation. Elena had been surrounded by pack her entire life. Even when they ignored her, they were present. Now there was nothing. No voices, no movement except her own, no sense of connection to anything living. She forced herself to focus on practical things. Water first. She found a small stream and drank deeply, filling her empty stomach with the icy liquid. Then shelter. She needed to find or build something before nightfall. The problem was she had no idea how to build a shelter. She'd heard wolves mention it, but never the specifics. Branches and leaves? Dig into the snow? Use a cave? Elena settled for finding a massive fallen tree with enough space underneath for her to crawl. She gathered pine branches and packed them around the opening, creating a barrier against the wind. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. By the time she finished, the light was fading. Her hands were scraped and bleeding from handling the rough branches, and she was shivering despite her constant movement. Fire. She needed fire. Elena pulled out Sigrid's flint with shaking hands and started gathering dry tinder, dead leaves, pine needles, small twigs. It took her 20 tries to get a spark, 30 to get the spark to catch. And then, miraculously, she had a tiny flame. She fed it carefully, adding progressively larger pieces of wood until she had an actual fire burning. The warmth was incredible, and she sat as close as she dared, letting it drive away the cold. The first night was endless. Every sound made her jump, branches creaking, animals moving in the darkness, the wind howling through the trees. She kept the fire burning, terrified that if it went out, she'd freeze before dawn. Somewhere around midnight, she heard something large moving through the underbrush, something that breathed heavily and snapped branches as it walked. Elena grabbed Sigrid's blade and pressed herself against the fallen tree, trying to make herself as small as possible. The footsteps came closer, closer. She could smell it now, wet fur and old meat. Then it was right outside her shelter. Through the gaps in the pine branches, she caught a glimpse. Massive, dark-furred, easily 3 times her size. A bear. It had to be a bear. Don't move, don't breathe, don't exist. The bear snuffled at her shelter, its breath hot and rank. Elena's hand tightened on the blade. The tiny weapon would do nothing against something that size, but it was all she had. The bear circled once, twice. Elena's heart hammered so hard she thought it might give her away. Then miraculously the bear moved on. The footsteps faded into the distance, and Elena was left shaking and gasping in her inadequate shelter. She didn't sleep at all that night. Dawn came gray and cold. Elena dragged herself out of the shelter, every muscle screaming in protest. Her fire had died to embers, and the temperature had dropped well below freezing. 2 more days. She needed food. The water was handling her thirst, but her stomach was cramping with hunger. She tried to remember what the wolves had said about foraging, but her exhausted mind couldn't pull up the details. Berries. Some berries were safe, but which ones? She found a bush with dark purple berries and stood there staring at them, trying to decide. Were these the safe ones or the poisonous ones? In the end, she didn't eat them. Better hungry than dead from poison. Instead, she focused on the wires Sigrid had given her. Traps. If she could trap something small, a rabbit, a squirrel, she could eat. She found a game trail and set the wire in a loop, securing it to a flexible branch. It was crude and probably wrong, but it was something. Then she kept moving, not wanting to stay in one place too long. The bear might come back, or something worse. The second day blurred into exhaustion and cold. Elena walked to stay warm, stopping only to check her trap, empty, and to drink from streams. Her lips were cracked, her hands numb, her body running on fumes. As afternoon faded toward evening, she realized she'd made a terrible mistake. In her wandering, she'd lost track of where she'd built her shelter. The forest all looked the same, trees and snow and darkness closing in. Panic tried to rise, but Elena forced it down. Getting lost was bad. Panicking about being lost was worse. Follow the water, Sigrid had said. Streams run downhill. Elena found a stream, not the one from yesterday, a different one, and started following it. The light was almost gone when she stumbled into a small clearing and saw it. The lightning-struck pine with the split trunk. The marker. The way home. She'd found it a day early. Relief flooded through her so intensely she nearly collapsed. She'd done it. She'd survived. All she had to do was wait until the time limit was up and then walk back to the settlement. She was going to pass. Elena built another fire in the clearing, not caring any more about conserving her energy. She had all night and the next day to rest. She'd made it. As she sat by the fire, warming her frozen hands, she heard it. Voices in the distance. Unfamiliar voices speaking in harsh, clipped tones. She froze. The voices got closer. Elena doused her fire and pressed herself against a tree, trying to disappear into the shadows. 4 wolves emerged into the clearing. Large, well-armed, and wearing colors she didn't recognize, black and red instead of Nightfang's gray and brown. Not Nightfang. Enemy pack. One of them sniffed the air. Someone was here recently. Fire's still warm. Nightfang territory, another said. We shouldn't be this deep. Relax, it's probably just a scout. The leader, a massive alpha with a scarred face, grinned. And if it is, we'll send a message back to Kyle Draven about respecting boundaries. They started searching the clearing. Elena's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. If they found her, she was dead. 4 trained warriors against an exhausted, weaponless female who'd barely survived 2 days in the forest. She had to run, but running would make noise, and noise would give her away. So she stayed frozen, barely breathing, and prayed they wouldn't look close enough. One of the wolves walked right past her tree, so close she could have reached out and touched him. He stopped, turned, looked directly at her hiding spot. Their eyes met. Their eyes met. Elena's breath caught in her throat. The wolf's hand went to his weapon, a wicked-looking blade strapped to his thigh, and his mouth opened to call out. She moved without thinking, pure desperation driving her forward. She lunged from her hiding spot and slammed into him with all her weight, one hand clamping over his mouth, the other fumbling for Sigrid's blade in her boot. They went down hard. The wolf was bigger, stronger, trained, but surprise was on her side for exactly 3 seconds. Then he recovered and threw her off like she weighed nothing. Elena hit the ground, the impact driving the air from her lungs. She scrambled backward as he stood, his eyes wide with shock. "Female," he said, and there was genuine surprise in his voice. Then his expression hardened. "Night Fang scum." "Here," he shouted to his companions. "I found—" Elena threw herself at him again, this time going low, aiming for his knees. It was a move born of desperation rather than skill, but it worked. He stumbled, and she managed to get the blade up, slashing wildly. The edge caught his forearm, and he cursed, blood welling from the cut. The other 3 wolves converged on the clearing. Elena knew she had seconds before they reached her. Seconds to decide, fight or run. Fighting was suicide. Running was probably also suicide, but at least it gave her a chance. She bolted. Behind her she heard shouting, "After her! Don't let her escape!" The forest became a blur of branches and snow and terror. Elena ran harder than she'd ever run in her life, her lungs burning, her legs screaming in protest. She had no plan, no destination, just the animal need to survive. A root caught her foot and she went sprawling. Before she could get up, hands grabbed her, hauling her upright. The leader, the scarred alpha, slammed her against a tree hard enough to rattle her teeth. "Well, well," he said, his breath hot on her face. "What do we have here? A little night-fanged bitch wandering alone in the deep forest." "Let me go," Elena gasped. "Let you go?" He laughed. "So you can run back to Kyle Draven and tell him we're scouting his territory? I don't think so." The wolf she'd cut joined them, his arm still bleeding. "She attacked me, unprovoked." "Liar," Elena spat. "You were hunting me." "Hunting?" The leader's grip tightened on her throat. "We were passing through. You're the one who escalated things." He leaned closer. "But now that you've drawn blood, well, pack law says we have the right to retaliate." Elena's hand was still clenched around Sigrid's blade. In a move that was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, she drove it upward, aiming for the leader's ribs. He caught her wrist before the blade connected, his strength crushing. He squeezed until her fingers went numb and the blade dropped. "Spirited," he said. "I like that. Ashclaw could use wolves with spirit." His smile was predatory. "How about it, little wolf? Want to join a real pack instead of Draven's mountain savages? Go to hell." He hit her. Not hard enough to knock her out, but hard enough to split her already healing lip and make stars explode across her vision. "Wrong answer." He released her throat and she collapsed, gasping. "Tie her up. We're taking her back to Ronan. Let him decide what to do with her." Rough hands grabbed her, binding her wrists with coarse rope. Elena tried to fight, but exhaustion and hunger had stolen whatever strength she had left. Within seconds, she was trussed up and being hauled to her feet. "Move!" one of the wolves ordered, shoving her forward. They marched her through the forest as darkness fell completely. Elena's mind raced, trying to find a way out, but she kept coming back to the same conclusion. She was done. Even if she escaped these wolves, she was too weak to make it back to the marker in time. Her survival trial was over, and worse, she'd failed in a way that endangered the entire pack. If Ashclaw learned about Nightfang's patrol patterns from her, if they discovered weaknesses, she'd become exactly what everyone said she was. a liability. After what felt like hours, they reached a camp. Tents scattered among the trees, a large fire burning in the center. More ashclaw wolves moved about, and they all stopped to stare as Elena was dragged in. "What's this?" A massive wolf emerged from the largest tent. He was easily as big as Kael, with graying hair and eyes like chips of ice. Authority radiated from him like heat from the fire. "Alpha Ronin," the scarred leader said. "We found this one in Night Fang territory. She attacked Marcus when he spotted her." Ronin's cold eyes fixed on Elena. "Did she now?" He circled her slowly. "Your Night Fang?" Elena lifted her chin, refusing to show fear even though she was drowning in it. "Yes. You're also half dead, hungry, exhausted, freezing." He smiled. "Running from something or to something?" She said nothing. "Interesting." Ronin gestured to his wolves. "Bring her inside. I want to talk to this one." They dragged her into his tent and threw her down on furs near a brazier. The warmth was almost painful after so long in the cold. Ronin dismissed his wolves and sat across from her, studying her like she was a particularly curious specimen. "You know who I am," he said. It wasn't a question. "Ronin Varric, Alpha of Ashclaw." Elena had heard the name whispered in Night Fang, always with hatred, always with respect. "Good. Then you know I don't waste time on games." He leaned forward. "Why were you alone in the deep forest? Night Fang doesn't send wolves out solo unless they're being punished or tested." Elena's jaw tightened. Answering felt like betrayal, but silence might be worse. "Tested," she finally said. "Ah, survival trial." Ronin's smile widened. "Which means you're unclaimed, an outsider trying to earn your place." "I'm claimed, by Kael Draven." The smile vanished. "You're lying." "I'm not." Ronin stood abruptly and grabbed her face, forcing her to look at him. His eyes searched hers, looking for deception. Whatever he saw made his expression shift from anger to something more calculating. "You're not lying," he said slowly. "Kael Draven claimed you." "When?" 5 days ago. "And he sent you into the deep forest alone." Ronin released her and paced the tent. "Either he's testing you or he wants you dead. Based on the state of you, I'd guess the former, which means—" He stopped pacing and looked at her with new interest. "Which means you're valuable to him." Elena's stomach dropped. She'd just handed Ronin a weapon. "Here's what's going to happen," Ronin said, his voice taking on the quality of stone. "You're going to stay here as my guest. And when Kael comes looking for you, and he will come, we're going to have a conversation about boundaries and territory and all the things he's been ignoring. He won't come. I'm just a trial wolf. I'm worthless. Then you have nothing to worry about." Ronin called for his wolves. "Put her in the holding tent. Guards on her at all times. She's not to be harmed, but she doesn't leave." They hauled Elena out and threw her into a smaller tent with 2 guards posted outside. Inside was nothing but bare ground and a single thin blanket. No fire, no food, no water. Elena sat in the darkness, her wrists still bound, and tried to think. She had to get out. Had to get back to the marker, had to warn Night Fang that Ashclaw was scouting their territory. But she was so tired, so hungry, so broken. She must have slept, because she woke to shouting outside. "Don't care what he said. She needs food or she'll die before he can use her." Ronin said, "Ronin isn't here right now. I am." The tent flap opened and a female entered carrying a water skin and what looked like dried meat. She was young, maybe 18, with kind eyes that seemed out of place in Ashclaw. "Eat," she said, setting the items down. "Quickly, before the guards notice." Elena's hands were still bound. The female, clearly realizing this, pulled out a knife and cut the ropes. Blood rushed back into Elena's hands, painful and prickling. "Why are you helping me?" Elena asked. "Because I know what it's like to be trapped." The female glanced at the tent entrance. "I'm Lila. I was taken from my pack 3 years ago. Been here ever since." "Taken?" "Ashclaw doesn't just recruit, they raid. Anyone who resists gets killed. Anyone who submits gets absorbed." Lila's voice was bitter. "I submitted. Didn't have a choice. I was 15 and my entire family was dead." Elena drank deeply from the water skin, then tore into the dried meat. It was tough and salty, but it was food. "There's a way out," Lila whispered. "East side of the camp, where the trees are thickest. The guards rotate at dawn. You'll have maybe 2 minutes." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because if you make it back to Nightfang, you can warn them. Ronan's planning something big. I don't know what, but I've heard him talking with his council. He wants Nightfang territory." Lila's eyes were urgent. "He wants to destroy Kale Draven." Before Elena could respond, voices outside grew loud. Lila pressed the knife into Elena's hand. "Hide it, and run when you get the chance." She slipped out of the tent, and Elena heard her arguing with the guards about following orders. Elena quickly tucked the knife into her boot. Sigurd's blade was long gone, but this one would do. She forced herself to stay awake, to listen to the camp sounds, to mark the passage of time. When the sky outside the tent began to lighten from black to gray, she knew dawn was approaching. The guard rotation happened exactly as Lila said. Elena heard the exchange of words, the brief moment of confusion as new guards took position. She moved, slipping out the back of the tent, staying low, moving as quietly as her exhausted body would allow. The east side of the camp, through the trees. "Don't look back." She made it maybe 30 yards before someone shouted, "Prisoners escaping!" Elena ran. Again. Her legs threatened to give out, but fear drove her forward. Behind her, she could hear wolves giving chase. Multiple wolves, moving fast. The forest became a nightmare of branches whipping at her face, roots trying to trip her, her own body betraying her with every step. She wasn't going to make it. They were going to catch her, and this time Ronan wouldn't be merciful. The ground disappeared beneath her feet. She'd run right off a ledge. For a sickening moment, she was airborne, then she hit freezing water. A river. She'd run straight into a river. The current grabbed her immediately, pulling her under, tumbling her over rocks. Elena fought to the surface, gasped for air, went under again. Her clothes were soaked, weighing her down, and the cold was so intense it felt like knives. She had maybe minutes before hypothermia set in. If she didn't get out of the water, she was dead. But the current was too strong. Every time she tried to swim to the bank, the river dragged her further downstream. Her vision started to blur. Her movements became sluggish. This was it. After everything, the ceremonies, the trials, the capture, she was going to die in a river. Her hand hit something solid, a fallen tree stretching across the water. Elena grabbed it with the last of her strength and held on, the current trying to rip her away. She couldn't hold on. Her fingers were too numb, her grip too weak. Then hands grabbed her, hauling her out of the water and onto the bank. Elena collapsed on solid ground, coughing up river water, shaking so hard her teeth rattled. She tried to focus on her rescuer, expecting to see ash-claw wolves ready to drag her back. Instead, she saw Kyle. He crouched beside her, his pale eyes taking in her soaked clothes, her bound wrists. Wait, no, Lila had cut those. Her general state of near death. "You're alive," he said, and there was something in his voice Elena couldn't identify. "Barely," she managed through chattering teeth. Behind Kyle, she saw Vera and Garrett emerging from the trees. They'd found her. Somehow, impossibly, they'd found her. "Ashclaw," Elena gasped. They're planning something. Ronan wants..." Later. Kale stripped off his jacket and wrapped it around her. "You're hypothermic. Can you walk?" "I don't know." He picked her up without another word, cradling her against his chest. Elena wanted to protest, to say she could manage on her own, but the warmth radiating from him was too good, and she was too tired to care about pride. "We need to move," Vera said urgently. "Ashclaw will be tracking her." "Let them come," Kyle growled. "We're on our side of the border now. If they cross, it's an act of war." They moved fast through the forest, Kyle carrying Elena like she weighed nothing. She drifted in and out of consciousness, catching fragments of conversation. Found her tracks heading toward the marker. Ashclaw scent all over the area. Lucky we started looking early. Eventually they reached Nightfang territory, and the settlement came into view. Wolves gathered as Kyle carried Elena into the main cave, their faces showing shock and something that might have been respect. He set her down near the fire, and Vera immediately began checking her for injuries. Hypothermia, malnutrition, exhaustion. She needs warmth and food in that order. "Get her what she needs," Kale ordered. As Vera worked, stripping off Elena's wet clothes and wrapping her in furs, Kale crouched beside her. "Tell me about Ashclaw." "Everything." Elena forced her sluggish mind to work. She told him about being captured, about Ronan's camp, about what Lila had said about raids and territory and destroying Nightfang. Kale's expression grew darker with every word. When she finished, he stood and addressed the gathered wolves. "Ashclaw has crossed the line. They captured one of ours, held her prisoner, and Ronan himself admitted to planning attacks on our territory." His voice cut through the cave like a blade. "This is a declaration of war." The wolves erupted in angry growls and shouts. Garrett was already talking about organizing patrols. Torben wanted to raid Ashclaw immediately in retaliation. "No," Kael said, and silence fell. "We don't react blindly. That's what Ronan wants, us to be predictable, to fight on his terms." He looked at Elena. "She gave us intelligence. We use it." Vera finished wrapping Elena in warm furs and pressed a cup of something hot into her hands. "Drink. It'll help." Elena sipped, some kind of herbal tea that tasted awful but spread warmth through her chest. As the immediate danger of freezing to death passed, her mind started working again. "I failed the trial," she said quietly. Kael looked at her. "What?" "The survival trial. I didn't make it back to the marker in time. I got captured. I failed." "You made it to the marker on day 2, Vera said. "We know. We found your shelter there. But then I got caught by Ashclaw. I lost a day and a half." Kyle crouched down to her level. "You survived being taken prisoner by a hostile pack. You escaped from a guarded camp. You made it back to Nightfang territory despite being hunted, exhausted, and half dead from exposure." His pale eyes were intense. "That's not failure. That's exactly the kind of survival the trial tests for. I didn't come back by myself. You found me. Because you were trying to come back. You were heading in the right direction when you hit the river." He stood. "The trial is past. You're Nightfang." The word should have brought relief, joy, triumph. Instead, Elena just felt numb. She'd passed, yes, but the cost was too high. Ashclaw now knew about her, knew she was Kael's mate, knew she was a weakness they could exploit. Over the next few hours, as Elena slowly regained function in her frozen limbs, the full situation became clear. Kael called a council meeting, and Elena, despite protests that she should rest, insisted on being present. The council consisted of Kael, Vera, Garrett, Torben, and 3 others Elena hadn't met. They gathered in a smaller cave off the main chamber, sitting around a rough table made from a massive tree trunk. "Ronan Varric has been testing our borders for months," Torben said, spreading out a crude map made from charcoal on bark. "Small incursions, scouts disappearing, game being driven away from our hunting grounds. We thought it was just pressure tactics." "It's more than that," Vera added. "He's preparing for a full assault. The question is when and where." "And why now?" Garrett asked. "Ashclaw and Nightfang have had peace for 10 years. Tense peace, but peace." Kael was silent, his eyes on the map. Finally he spoke. "Because I took a mate." Everyone looked at him. "The old laws," he continued. "An alpha without a mate can't truly lead, can't make binding alliances, can't declare war or negotiate peace treaties. For 5 years I've been ruling Nightfang without that authority. It's made us vulnerable." "So you claiming Elena," Vera's eyes widened, "you weren't just following tradition, you were closing a legal loophole." "Yes, and Ronan knows it. Now that I have a mate, I can make official declarations. I can invoke the old laws against him." Kael's jaw tightened. "Which is exactly why he'll try to take her." Elena's blood went cold. "What?" Kael looked at her. "There's an ancient law, older than the packs, older than the territories. If an alpha can claim another alpha's mate through trial by combat, the losing alpha forfeits their territory." "That's barbaric," Elena said. "That's wolf law, and it's still binding." Garrett leaned forward. "But Elena's already claimed. The law only applies to unclaimed females." "Unless he can prove the claim is invalid," Vera said slowly. "If she hadn't passed the trials, the claim wouldn't be complete. She'd still be technically unclaimed." "But I did pass," Elena said. "You said so yourself." "I said so," Kael agreed. But Ronan wasn't here to witness it. He could challenge the validity, demand she undergo trials again, overseen by neutral alphas. The implications were staggering. If Ronan challenged Elena's status as Kael's mate, and if he won, he could claim her himself, and through her, claim Nightfang territory. So what do we do? One of the other council members asked. Kael stood, his hands flat on the table. We make sure there's no question about Elena's status, no technicality he can exploit, no loophole he can use. How? Elena asked. He turned to her, and something in his expression made her stomach flip. The bonding ceremony. If we complete the full mate bond in front of witnesses, there's no legal challenge he can make. You'd be unquestionably mine, and I'd be unquestionably yours. When? Vera asked. Tomorrow night, under the full moon. Kael's voice was firm. We make it official, make it binding, and we dare Ronan to challenge it. The council dispersed with orders to prepare. Elena sat in the empty chamber, trying to process everything. Tomorrow night she'd be bound to Kael Draven, not just as a political necessity, not just to pass a trial, but permanently, irrevocably. Footsteps behind her. Kael had returned. You should rest, he said. I should, but I can't. Elena looked up at him. This bonding ceremony, do we have to consummate the bond? Kael's expression was unreadable. Eventually, yes, but not tomorrow. Tomorrow is about the legal binding. The rest comes later. How much later? As long as you need. The answer surprised her. I thought Nightfang didn't do gentle. We don't, but we also don't force. There's a difference between being hard and being cruel. He sat down across from her. You've earned your place here, Elena. The trials, the escape, everything you've done. You've proven you belong. This ceremony is just making official what you've already achieved. And if Ronan challenges anyway, then I'll kill him. Kael's voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather. Or he'll kill me. Either way, it ends. Elena stared at him. You'd fight to the death over a legal technicality? I'd fight to the death to protect my pack. You're part of that pack now. He stood. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. He left, and Elena was alone with her thoughts. She'd come to Nightfang expecting to fail, expecting to be broken, expecting to prove everyone right about her being too weak to survive. Instead, she'd passed trials that should have killed her. She'd escaped from an enemy pack. She'd survived things that would have destroyed most wolves. And tomorrow, she'd be bound to an alpha who'd seen her at her absolute worst and still thought she was worth keeping. Elena lay down on the furs, her body finally warm, her stomach finally full, and let herself feel something she hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope. The next day passed in a blur of preparation. Wolves cleaned the ceremony ground, gathered special herbs, prepared ritual markings. Elena was bathed and dressed in clothes she'd never seen before. Soft leather dyed deep gray, with silver clasps that caught the light. Sigrid appeared at some point, clicking her tongue over Elena's appearance. You look half dead still. Feel it too? Good. Means you're alive. The old female adjusted Elena's collar. The bonding ceremony is simple. You stand before the pack. Kael claims you formally. You accept or reject. If you accept, he marks you. You mark him. That's it. What kind of marking? Sigrid showed Elena her own shoulder, where a faded scar formed a distinctive pattern. Bite. Right here. Deep enough to scar, not deep enough to cripple. It's permanent. The mark never fully fades. Elena swallowed hard. And I have to mark him too? If you want the bond to be equal. Otherwise, he owns you and you don't own him. Sigrid's eyes were shrewd. Your choice. But I'd recommend equal. As sunset approached, Elena was led to the ceremony ground. The entire pack had gathered, every wolf in Nightfang, watching in silence as she walked to the center. Kael stood waiting, dressed in formal leathers with his weapons visible. Under the rising moon, he looked exactly like what he was, a warrior alpha who'd clawed his way to power and held it through sheer force of will. The pack formed a circle around them. Vera stepped forward, serving as witness since there was no elder alpha present. We gather under the full moon to witness the completion of a mate bond, Vera announced. Kyle Draven, Alpha of Nightfang, has claimed Elena Voss. She has passed the trials. The bond may now be sealed. Kale turned to Elena. I claim you as my mate, bound by law, bound by blood, bound until death. Do you accept? Elena's heart hammered. This was it, the point of no return. She thought about Iron Hollow, about 5 years of rejection, 5 years of being invisible, 5 years of knowing she'd never be enough. Then she thought about the past week, about fighting Mara, about learning from Vera, about surviving the forest and escaping Ashclaw, about proving them all wrong. I accept, she said clearly. Kale's eyes flashed. He moved closer, tilting his head to expose his throat in a gesture of trust that shocked her. Then mark me. Elena hesitated only a moment. Then she leaned in and bit down on his shoulder, tasting blood, feeling the muscle and tendon beneath. Kale didn't flinch. When she pulled back, her mark was clear on his skin, a perfect impression of her teeth that would scar and brand him as hers. Now me, Kale said. Elena exposed her own shoulder. She tried to stay calm, tried to be brave, but when Kale's teeth sank in, the pain was immediate and intense. She gasped but didn't pull away. The bite lasted maybe 5 seconds. When Kale released her, blood ran down her shoulder and the pain was white-hot. Bound, Vera announced. The bond is sealed. Elena Voss is now Elena Draven, mate to the Alpha, full member of Nightfang Pack. The wolves erupted in howls. Not celebration exactly, but acknowledgement, recognition. Elena swayed slightly, dizzy from pain and blood loss and the enormity of what she'd just done. Kale steadied her with a hand on her uninjured arm. You did well. Before Elena could respond, a howl rose from the forest, long, mournful, and clearly a signal. Every wolf went silent. Another howl answered the first, then another, then a dozen more, all from different directions, all closing in. Garrett swore viciously. That's Ashclaw. They're surrounding us. Kale's expression went cold and deadly. How many? From the howls, 50, maybe more. 50 against Nightfang's 37. Bad odds, and everyone knew it. A figure emerged from the tree line, massive, gray-haired, radiating authority. Ronan Varric stepped into the ceremony ground like he owned it, with a dozen of his wolves behind him. Kyle Draven, he called out. We need to talk. You're on Nightfang territory uninvited, Kale replied, his voice deadly calm. That's an act of war. Not if I'm invoking ancient law. Ronan's smile was sharp. I'm here to make a formal challenge, for your mate, for your territory, for everything you have. The air itself seemed to freeze. Ronan's eyes found Elena in the crowd, and his smile widened. Hello again, little wolf. Did you really think escaping would save you? Ronan's eyes found Elena in the crowd, and his smile widened. Hello again, little wolf. Did you really think escaping would save you? Elena's shoulder throbbed where Kyle had marked her, fresh blood still warm against her skin. She met Ronan's gaze and refused to look away. The bonding ceremony was completed, Kyle said, stepping between Elena and Ronan. She's mine by law. There's no challenge to make. Isn't there? Ronan gestured to his wolves, and one of them stepped forward carrying a leather satchel. I invoke the right of contestation. Ancient law, older than your territory markers, older than your pathetic little settlement. Vera moved closer to Kyle, her voice low. He can't. The ceremony was witnessed. The bond is sealed. He can if he has grounds, Kyle said grimly. What grounds, Ronan? Ronan's wolf opened the satchel and pulled out a bundle of parchment, old, yellowed with age, covered in dense script. The law is clear. A mate bond can be contested within 3 days of completion if the claimant can prove one of 3 things: deception, coercion, or unworthiness. Elena passed the trials, Garrett growled. We all saw it. Did you? Ronan's smile was poison. I have testimony from my own wolves that they found her dying in the forest, too weak to defend herself, too broken to survive. That doesn't sound like passing to me. Your wolves captured her. Kyle's voice was ice. That's not failure, that's an act of war. Is it? Or was she already compromised before my wolves found her? Ronan gestured at Elena. Look at her. Half-starved, covered in bruises and cuts, barely able to stand. She didn't survive the trial. She stumbled through it and got lucky. The accusation hung in the air. Elena could feel the pack's eyes on her, could sense their doubt creeping back in. Even after everything, they still questioned whether she was strong enough. The law recognizes survival in any form, Vera said. Luck, skill, desperation. It doesn't matter. She made it back alive. That's passing. Except she didn't make it back, Ronan countered. Your alpha had to rescue her from a river. Without his intervention, she'd be dead. He pulled another document from the satchel. I've brought 3 neutral alphas to witness and judge. If they determine she didn't pass the trial fairly, the bond is void. 3 more wolves emerged from the tree line. Elena didn't recognize them, but from the way Nightfang wolves tensed, they were important. Alphas from other territories, powerful enough that even Kale couldn't simply dismiss them. This is a setup, Elena said, her voice carrying across the ceremony ground. Everyone turned to look at her. You're twisting the law to steal territory you can't take by force. Ronan's eyes glittered. Careful, little wolf. You don't understand the games alphas play. I understand perfectly. Elena stepped forward, ignoring the pain in her shoulder, the exhaustion in her bones. You waited until after the bonding ceremony to make your challenge because you wanted to create maximum chaos. You brought neutral witnesses to make it look legitimate. But this isn't about law, it's about conquest. Smart girl, Ronan said. Too bad intelligence doesn't make you strong. No, but it makes me right. Elena turned to the neutral alphas. I request the right of evidence. Silence fell over the clearing. Even Ronan looked surprised. One of the neutral alphas, a female with silver hair and scars crossing her face, stepped forward. You know the law. I learned it, Elena said. The right of evidence says that in any legal challenge, the accused party can present proof of their worthiness before judgment is passed. The silver-haired alpha's lips curved slightly. That's correct. How do you know this? Because I spent 2 days listening to every conversation I could find about pack law. Because I knew I'd need it. Elena met Ronan's eyes. Because I'm not as stupid as you think I am. Kale moved beside her, and she felt his hand brush her uninjured arm, a gesture of support so subtle most wolves probably missed it. The right of evidence is valid, the silver-haired alpha announced. What proof do you offer, Elena Draven? Elena's mind raced. She had no physical proof. No witnesses to her survival except Kyle's wolves, who would be dismissed as biased. All she had was her word and her wits, so she'd use them. I offer testimony, Elena said, mine and others. I'll tell you exactly what happened during my trial, and then I'll prove that I not only survived, I learned. Ronan laughed. Words are cheap. Then let's make them expensive. Elena turned to face the gathered wolves, Nightfang, Ashclaw, and neutral parties alike. The survival trial required me to spend 3 days alone in the deep forest. I made it to the marker on day 2. I built shelter, made fire, set traps. I survived an encounter with a bear without weapons or help. She pulled Lila's knife from her boot, the one piece of evidence she had. On the second night, I was captured by Ashclaw scouts who were illegally scouting Nightfang territory. This knife was given to me by one of your own wolves, Ronan, a female named Lila who's being held against her will in your pack. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ronan's expression darkened. Lies. Then bring Lila here and let her testify, Elena challenged. Or are you afraid of what she'll say? This proves nothing about your survival skills, one of the neutral alphas said. Doesn't it? Elena turned to him. I was captured by 4 trained warriors while exhausted and unarmed. I still managed to injure one of them before they subdued me. I was imprisoned, guarded, and restrained. I still escaped. I was hunted by Ashclaw wolves through terrain I didn't know while hypothermic and starving. I still made it back to Nightfang territory. She faced Ronan directly. You want to claim I'm weak? I survived your wolves. I survived your prison. I survived everything you threw at me. That's not luck, that's refusing to die. The silver-haired alpha studied Elena with new interest. The law states that survival trials test a wolf's ability to endure hardship and return alive. It doesn't specify the nature of the hardship. Exactly, Elena said. I was tested by elements and by enemies. I passed both. She passed nothing, Ronan snarled. She was rescued by her mate. Without him, she'd be dead. Would I? Elena's voice grew cold. Let's talk about what really happened. Your scouts found me at the marker, already successful in my trial. They captured me not because I was weak, but because you ordered them to scout Nightfang territory and seize any opportunity they found. She addressed the neutral alphas. Ronan Varric has been violating territorial boundaries for months. I'm not the first Nightfang wolf his scouts have encountered. I'm just the first one he saw value in capturing. She paused. Because I'm Kyle Draven's mate, and taking me gives him legal grounds to challenge for Nightfang territory. These are serious accusations, the silver-haired alpha said. They're the truth. Elena turned to the Nightfang wolves. How many scouts have we lost in the past 6 months? How many patrol wolves have disappeared near the borders? Torben stepped forward. 7. We assumed they were killed by wildlife or accidents. Or by Ashclaw, Elena said. Testing your defenses, probing for weaknesses, building toward this moment. Ronan's expression had gone from amused to dangerous. You're making enemies you can't afford, little wolf. I already have enemies. What I need are witnesses. Elena looked at each neutral alpha in turn. I invoke the right of investigation. If Ronan is violating territorial law, his challenge is invalidated. You can't use illegal actions as grounds for legal challenges. The third neutral alpha, a massive male with gold eyes, spoke for the first time. The right of investigation requires evidence of illegal activity. Do you have such evidence? This was the gamble. Elena had no hard proof of Ashclaw's border violations, but she had something else. I have testimony from one of Ronan's own wolves. Lila told me about the raids, the forced recruitments, the systematic violations. Elena met Ronan's glare. And I'm willing to bet that if you investigate his pack, you'll find more wolves like her, more proof, more witnesses. One wolf's word against an alpha's, Ronan said dismissively. You think that matters? I think, the silver-haired alpha said slowly, that these accusations are serious enough to warrant investigation, especially given the timing of this challenge. Ronan's jaw clenched. This is absurd. I came here following proper legal procedure, based on intelligence gathered through illegal border crossings, Elena interrupted. You can't have it both ways. Either your scouts were on Nightfang territory legally, which they weren't, or this entire challenge is built on actions that violate pack law. The neutral alphas conferred quietly among themselves. Elena could feel her heart hammering, could feel the weight of every eye on her. This was it. She'd made her case using nothing but words and logic and the scraps of pack law she'd managed to learn. It was either enough or it wasn't. The silver-haired alpha turned back to face the gathered wolves. We need to consult the old texts and investigate these claims properly. This challenge cannot proceed until we determine whether the underlying actions were legal. That could take weeks, Ronan protested. Then it takes weeks. The gold-eyed alpha's voice was firm. Pack law exists to prevent exactly this kind of opportunistic power grab. If Elena Draven's accusations have merit, your challenge is void regardless of her trial performance. Ronan looked like he wanted to argue further, but the neutral alphas had spoken. To defy them would be to defy the entire legal system that gave his challenge legitimacy in the first place. Fine, he spat. Investigate. Question every wolf in my pack if you want. You'll find nothing because there's nothing to find. His eyes found Elena. But when you clear me, and you will, I'm coming back to finish this. And next time, little wolf, your clever words won't save you. He turned and stalked back into the forest, his wolves following. Within minutes, Ashclaw was gone, leaving only the scent of their presence and the tension they'd created. The neutral alphas approached Kyle. We'll begin the investigation immediately, the silver-haired female said. Until it's complete, the challenge is suspended. Your mate bond stands. Thank you, Kale said formally. After they departed, silence held for a long moment. Then Garrett started laughing, a rough, disbelieving sound. She just outsmarted Ronan Varric, he said. The little city wolf outsmarted the most ruthless alpha in the mountains. She didn't just outsmart him, Vera said, looking at Elena with something approaching respect. She turned his own strategy against him. He came here to use law as a weapon, and she used it better. The Nightfang wolves began murmuring among themselves, the tone shifting from doubt to grudging admiration. Elena swayed slightly, the adrenaline draining away and leaving only exhaustion. Kale steadied her. "Inside, you need medical attention." "I need to sit down before I fall down," Elena muttered. He half carried her into the main cave and settled her near the fire. Vera brought medical supplies and began cleaning the bite mark on Elena's shoulder properly. "That was reckless," Vera said as she worked. "Challenging Ronan like that, he could have killed you where you stood." "He could have tried," Kale said quietly. "He wouldn't have succeeded." Elena looked at him. "You would have fought him?" "To the death, if necessary." Kale's pale eyes were steady. "You're my mate. That means something up here." "It means you own me?" "It means I protect you. And apparently it means you protect yourself pretty damn effectively." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Where did you learn to argue pack law like that?" "I listened, like Sigrid told me to." Elena winced as Vera applied something that burned. "And I remembered that knowledge isn't just about plants and tracking. It's about understanding the systems that govern everything." "Smart," Vera said, "and ballsy. Most wolves wouldn't dare invoke investigative rights against an alpha like Ronan." "Most wolves probably know better," Elena admitted. "I just knew I was out of options. Words were the only weapon I had." Over the next hour, wolves came by to offer grudging respect or outright congratulations. Some still looked skeptical, but the open hostility had faded. Elena had proven she wasn't just a weak outsider. She was a wolf who could think strategically and act decisively. Sigrid appeared and cackled when she heard what happened. "Told you intelligence matters up here. Strength isn't always about muscles." "I'm starting to realize that," Elena said. "Good. Because the investigation is going to make Ronan very angry, and angry alphas do stupid things." Sigrid's expression grew serious. "Watch yourself, girl. He'll be looking for revenge." After most wolves had dispersed, Kael sat beside Elena near the fire. They were quiet for a while, just existing in each other's presence. "You could have let me handle Ronan," he finally said. "How? By fighting him?" "Yes. And if you'd lost?" Kael was silent. "Exactly," Elena said. "Fighting was his game. He wanted you to react with violence because he was prepared for that. He wasn't prepared for someone to use the law against him. Most mates would trust their alpha to protect them. I do trust you, but I also trust myself." Elena looked at him. "You said you claimed me because I wouldn't break when things got hard. Well, things got hard. I didn't break. I fought back the only way I could." Kale studied her face, and something in his expression shifted. "You're not what I expected. Neither are you. What did you expect? A brutal mountain wolf who'd work me to death or kill me in the trials." Elena shrugged her good shoulder. "Instead, I got someone who's brutal when necessary, but not needlessly cruel. Someone who values intelligence as much as strength. Someone who—" She trailed off. "Who what?" "Someone who makes me want to stay," she finished quietly. The words hung between them. Kale reached out and touched the mark on her shoulder, his mark, permanently scarring her skin. "This is real now," he said. "The bond, the pack, all of it." "I know. No going back to Iron Hollow, no escaping to human cities. You're Nightfang until death." "I know that too." Elena met his eyes. "I'm not afraid of that anymore." "What are you afraid of?" She considered the question. "Failing, not in trials or challenges, but in being what the pack needs. What you need." "You're already what we need," Kael said. "You proved that tonight. Nightfang doesn't just need warriors who can fight. We need wolves who can think, who can see angles others miss, who can win battles without spilling blood." That sounds almost gentle. It's practical. Every wolf we lose weakens the pack. You saved lives tonight by preventing a war we weren't ready for. He stood and offered her his hand. "Come on. You need real rest, not just sitting by a fire." Elena took his hand and let him pull her up. Her shoulders screamed in protest, but she ignored it. Kale led her to his personal quarters, a cave chamber larger than her alcove, with actual furs on the floor and walls hung with weapons and tools. It was Spartan but functional. "This is your space too now," he said. "Mate of the Alpha lives with the Alpha." Elena looked around, trying to imagine this as home. It was strange and foreign and nothing like what she'd grown up with in Iron Hollow, but it was hers. "Get some sleep," Kyle said. "I'll be on watch tonight. Can't trust that Ronan won't try something stupid." Kyle. He paused at the entrance. "Thank you for coming after me in the forest, for believing I could pass the trial." "I didn't believe you could pass," he said. "I knew you would. There's a difference." He left, and Elena was alone in the Alpha's chamber. She lay down on the furs, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The investigation would take time, and Ronan wouldn't sit quietly while his actions were scrutinized. But for tonight, Elena had won. She'd used her mind instead of her strength, her words instead of her claws. And for the first time since arriving at Nightfang, she felt like she truly belonged. The next few days passed in a strange limbo. The neutral Alphas had taken up residence in a neighboring territory to conduct their investigation, and Nightfang waited for their verdict with collective tension. Elena spent the time learning everything she could. Vera taught her advanced tracking. Garrett showed her how to fight dirty, the kind of tactics that would never work in a fair fight but might save her life in a real one. Torben shared knowledge about territory maintenance and patrol routes. Even Mara, the young wolf who'd beaten her in the combat trial, approached with something resembling respect. "You've got guts," Mara said bluntly. "Standing up to Ronan like that? Most wolves would have just accepted the challenge and hoped their alpha won." "I'm not most wolves," Elena said. "No, you're definitely not." Mara paused. "Look, I was rough on you during the trial. That's just how we do things up here. But you proved you can take it and keep going. That matters." It was as close to an apology as Elena was likely to get, and she accepted it for what it was. On the fourth day, a messenger arrived from the neutral Alphas. Elena was in the main cave learning to tan leather when Kyle summoned her to his chamber. The three neutral Alphas were waiting there, along with Kyle's council. "We've completed our initial investigation," the silver-haired Alpha said, without preamble. "We found substantial evidence of Ashclaw border violations. 7 Nightfang wolves reported missing over the past 6 months. Multiple territorial markers found damaged or moved, and testimony from 3 Ashclaw wolves who confirmed Ronan ordered systematic boundary testing." Elena's breath caught. They'd found proof. "Furthermore," the gold-eyed Alpha added, "we located the female Lila. Her testimony corroborated Elena's claims about forced recruitment and illegal raids. She's being held under our protection until the matter is resolved." "What does this mean for the challenge?" Kyle asked. "Ronan Varick's challenge is invalidated," the silver-haired Alpha announced. "You cannot use illegal actions as grounds for legal proceedings. The mate bond between you and Elena stands without contest." The words should have brought relief. Instead, Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "He won't accept this," she said. "Ronan, he'll retaliate." "Almost certainly," the silver-haired Alpha agreed. "Which is why we're also charging him with territorial violations. He'll face a council of Alphas to answer for his crimes." "When?" Vera asked. "1 month, at the Gathering Grounds." The neutral Alpha looked at Kyle. "You and Elena will need to testify, as will any other Nightfang wolves who have evidence of Ashclaw's violations." After the neutral Alphas left, the council erupted in discussion. Some wanted to use this as an opportunity to push for territorial expansion. Others urged caution, warning that a cornered Ronan was dangerous. Elena listened to it all, her mind working through possibilities and consequences. Finally, she spoke up. "We need to find more wolves like Lila." Everyone turned to look at her. "Think about it," Elena continued. "Ronan's been raiding and forcing wolves into his pack for years. How many of them are there against their will? If we can find them, get them to testify, we build an even stronger case. And we weaken his pack from within," Garrett said slowly. "If enough of his wolves defect or testify against him, he loses authority." "Exactly." Elena looked at Kyle. "We don't just defend against Ronan, we dismantle his power base." Kyle's expression was unreadable. Then he smiled, a real smile that transformed his scarred face. You think like an alpha. I think like someone who's tired of being pushed around, Elena corrected. Ronan wanted to use law as a weapon. We're going to use it better. The council agreed to the plan. Over the next week, Nightfang sent careful inquiries to wolves who'd had contact with Ashclaw. They reached out through old trading connections, through wolves who'd left other packs, through any channel that might lead to information. Slowly, testimony began to trickle in. A male who'd watched Ronan kill a rival during a supposed training accident. A female whose family had been slaughtered when they refused to join Ashclaw. A young wolf who'd been taken at 15 and forced to fight or die. Each story was worse than the last, and each one painted Ronan as exactly what he was, a tyrant who ruled through fear and violence. Elena compiled it all, organizing testimony and evidence into a case that even the most skeptical alpha couldn't ignore. She worked late into the nights, her shoulders still healing, but her mind sharp. Kale found her one night surrounded by bark paper notes, her eyes red from strain. "You need to sleep," he said. "I need to finish this." "Elena." He crouched beside her. "The council is in 3 weeks. You have time." "What if I miss something? What if there's a gap in the evidence and Ronan finds it? Then we adapt. We fight. We survive." Kyle gently removed the papers from her hands. "But you won't be any use to anyone if you collapse from exhaustion." Elena wanted to argue, but she was too tired. She let Kyle guide her to the sleeping furs and lay down. "I'm not weak," she mumbled as sleep pulled at her. "I know. I can handle this." "I know that too." Kale's hand brushed her hair back from her face, a surprisingly gentle gesture. "But even the strongest wolves need rest. That's not weakness. That's wisdom." Elena drifted off with those words echoing in her mind. The weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Nightfang trained harder, patrolled more carefully, and built their case against Ronan piece by piece. The pack that had once doubted Elena now looked to her for strategic guidance. She'd become an unexpected leader, not through strength or dominance, but through intelligence and determination. The night before the council gathering, Kyle called a pack meeting. "Tomorrow, we face Ronan Varek in front of every major alpha in the territories," he said. "This isn't just about defending our borders. It's about establishing what kind of wolves we are. Do we solve problems through violence alone, or do we use every tool available?" He looked directly at Elena. "My mate showed us a different way. She proved that strength comes in many forms. Tomorrow, we prove that Nightfang is more than just a pack of mountain warriors. We're wolves who can outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast any enemy." The pack howled their agreement, and Elena felt something shift in her chest. These wolves, brutal, hard, unforgiving, had accepted her, not as a weak outsider they tolerated, but as one of their own. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She stood outside the cave, looking up at the stars, trying to calm her racing thoughts. Footsteps behind her. Kyle joined her at the edge of the settlement. "Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified," Elena admitted. "Tomorrow determines everything. If we fail, Ronan walks free. If we succeed, we make an enemy for life." "We already have an enemy for life. Tomorrow just makes it official." Kale was quiet for a moment. "You've changed Nightfang, you know. The pack sees problems differently now. They think before they fight. They look for angles instead of just charging in." "Is that good?" "It's necessary. The world is changing. Packs that only know violence will die out. We need to adapt." He looked at her. "You're that adaptation." Elena met his eyes. "When you claimed me, did you know this would happen?" "No, I thought you'd pass the trials and give me legal standing. Nothing more." Kale's expression softened slightly. "I didn't expect you to become essential." "Essential? To the pack? To our future? To me?" The words hung between them, weighted with meaning. Elena's heart hammered, but not from fear this time. "We should sleep," she said quietly. "Tomorrow's going to be brutal." "Tomorrow's going to change everything," Kyle corrected, "one way or another." They went back inside together, and Elena lay in the darkness thinking about impossible things. About a weak city wolf who'd become the mate of a mountain alpha. About using intelligence as a weapon. About finding strength not in what you could destroy, but in what you refuse to let destroy you. Tomorrow, she'd face Ronan Vorik again. But this time, she wouldn't be a prisoner or a victim. This time, she'd be a wolf who knew exactly how dangerous she could be. Dawn broke cold and clear over the mountains. Elena woke before the sun fully rose, her body tense with anticipation. Today was the council gathering, the day Ronan Vorik would answer for his crimes in front of every major alpha in the territories. Kael was already awake, checking weapons with methodical precision. He glanced at her. "Ready?" "No," Elena said honestly, "but I'm going anyway." "Good answer." The journey to the gathering grounds took most of the morning. Nightfang traveled as a unified pack, 37 wolves moving through the forest with purpose. Elena walked beside Kael at the front, acutely aware of the eyes on her. She was wearing formal leathers now, marked with Nightfang's colors, and the bite scar on her shoulder was clearly visible. The gathering grounds were a massive clearing carved into the mountainside, ringed by ancient stones that predated any living pack. Wolves were already assembling, hundreds of them, from a dozen different territories. The air buzzed with tension and old rivalries barely held in check. Ashclaw was there too. Elena spotted Ronan immediately, impossible to miss his bulk and the cluster of warriors surrounding him. His eyes found her across the clearing, and his smile was a predator's promise. "He's planning something," Vera murmured. "Look at his wolves. They're positioned for a fight." "Let him plan," Kael said calmly. "We came prepared for more than just words." The neutral alphas who'd investigated the case stood at the center of the gathering, along with 5 other alphas Elena didn't recognize. The council itself, ancient and powerful wolves who served as judges in disputes between packs. The silver-haired alpha raised her hand for silence. "We gather under ancient law to hear accusations against Ronan Vorik, alpha of Ashclaw Pack. The charges are territorial violation, illegal raids, forced recruitment, and murder." A ripple went through the crowd. Murder was the most serious charge. It demanded blood or exile. "How does the accused answer?" one of the council alphas asked. Ronan stepped forward, his expression confident. "I deny all charges. These accusations come from a rival pack seeking to weaken Ashclaw. They have no proof, only rumors, and the testimony of wolves who abandoned their loyalty." "We have substantial proof," the silver-haired alpha said. She gestured, and wolves began bringing forward evidence, territorial markers found damaged, testimony written on bark paper, witnesses willing to speak. For the next hour, the case unfolded. Nightfang wolves testified about missing pack members. Wolves from other territories spoke of Ashclaw aggression. Lila stood before the council and told her story, how Ronan's warriors had killed her family and forced her to join or die. Through it all, Ronan remained calm, too calm. When the last testimony ended, he finally spoke. "These are stories. Convenient stories from wolves who have reason to lie. Where's the evidence that I ordered any of this? Where's the proof that connects me directly to these alleged crimes?" The question hung in the air. Elena felt her stomach drop. He was right. All the testimony implicated Ashclaw warriors, but none directly proved Ronan had given the orders. "The Alpha is responsible for his pack's actions," Kael said. "Is he?" Ronan smiled. "By that logic, you should be held responsible for every Nightfang wolf who's ever crossed a border or started a fight. The law requires proof of direct involvement, not just circumstantial connection." The council alphas conferred quietly. Elena could see the doubt creeping into their expressions. Ronan had found the gap in their case, the lack of direct evidence linking him to the crimes. She had to act, now. "I can provide that proof," Elena said, her voice cutting across the murmurs. Every eye turned to her. Ronan's smile widened. "Can you? The weak little wolf who barely survived her trials? This should be entertaining." Elena stepped forward, pulling out a piece of bark paper she'd kept hidden. "During my captivity in Ashclaw camp, I heard Ronan discussing his plans with his council. He specifically mentioned wanting to expand into Nightfang territory and how the raids were softening our defenses." "Your word against mine," Ronan said dismissively. "And you were a prisoner under duress, not exactly a reliable witness." "True," Elena agreed, "which is why I brought someone else." She gestured to the edge of the clearing. A figure emerged from the crowd, an older male with gray in his hair and scars covering his arms. Elena had never seen him before, but she'd gambled that he existed. The male's voice was rough from disuse. "My name is Marcus Gray. I was Ronan Varek's second in command for 8 years. I left Ashclaw 6 months ago after he ordered me to kill a young female who refused to mate with one of his warriors." Ronan's expression went from confident to dangerous. "You're a deserter and a liar. I'm a wolf who got tired of following orders that violated everything our kind is supposed to stand for." Marcus faced the council. "Ronan keeps records, written orders for every raid, every recruitment, every kill. He thinks it makes him look organized and legitimate. I know where they're hidden." The clearing erupted in noise. Ronan's warriors tensed, hands going to weapons. Nightfang wolves moved to defensive positions. "Silence!" The head council alpha's voice boomed across the gathering. "Marcus Gray, you're willing to testify to this under oath?" "I am." "And you can produce these records?" "I can lead you to them. They're hidden in a cave 3 miles east of Ashclaw's main settlement. Ronan doesn't know I made copies before I left." Ronan's mask finally cracked. His face went dark with rage. "You're dead, Marcus. You and everyone who believes these lies." "Is that a threat?" the silver-haired alpha asked coldly. "In front of the council?" "It's a promise," Ronan snarled. Then he lunged, not at Marcus, but at Elena. He moved with shocking speed for a wolf his size. Elena barely had time to react before he was on her, his hand closing around her throat, lifting her off her feet. "You want proof?" Ronan's voice was a roar. "Here's proof. I'll kill the weak little wolf right here, and there's nothing anyone can do about it." Elena couldn't breathe. Spots danced across her vision as Ronan's grip tightened. She could hear shouting, feel the gathering descending into chaos. But she'd planned for this too. Her hand found the knife in her boot. Not Lila's knife, but a smaller blade she'd hidden specifically for this moment. She drove it upward, not at Ronan's body where his muscles would protect him, but at his wrist where the tendons were exposed. The blade sank in and Ronan howled, dropping her. Elena hit the ground, gasping, her throat bruised but her mind clear. Kael was there in an instant, putting himself between Elena and Ronan. "You just assaulted my maid in front of the council. That's an executable offense." "I invoke trial by combat," Ronan spat, cradling his bleeding wrist. "Ancient right. I challenge you, Kael Draven, for leadership of Nightfang and possession of your mate." The council alpha stepped forward. "The challenge is valid under ancient law. Do you accept, Kael Draven?" "I do." "No," Elena croaked, her voice ragged. "There's another way." Everyone turned to look at her. She forced herself to her feet, ignoring the pain in her throat. "The challenge is for leadership and mate rights," she said, her mind racing through every scrap of pack law she'd learned. "But ancient law also says the challenged party can name a proxy to fight in their place." Kael's eyes narrowed. "Elena, I invoke that right," she continued, her voice getting stronger. "I name myself as proxy." The clearing went dead silent. Ronan started laughing, a cruel, mocking sound. "You? Fight me? You can barely stand." "Can't I?" Elena met his eyes. "You're wounded. I wounded you, and ancient law says proxy combat is binding regardless of the outcome." "She's right," one of the council alphas said slowly. "If she fights as proxy and loses, Ronan wins the challenge. If she wins—" "She won't win," Ronan said flatly. "She's half my size and a fraction of my strength. This is suicide." "Maybe," Elena agreed, "but it's my choice. Do you accept the terms, or are you afraid of fighting someone you claim is weak?" The taunt hit its mark. Ronan's pride wouldn't let him back down from a challenge, especially not from a female he'd already tried to kill. "I accept," he growled. "And when I'm done, there won't be enough left of you to bury." "Elena, no." Kael grabbed her arm. "You can't win this fight. He'll kill you." "Probably," Elena said quietly. "But if you fight him and lose, he takes everything. The pack, the territory, me. If I fight and lose, at least you're still alpha. You can rebuild." "That's not—" "It's strategy." Elena touched his face, the first truly intimate gesture she'd made toward him. You taught me that survival isn't about being the strongest. It's about using every advantage you have. What advantage do you have against him? Elena smiled, though her throat hurt. He thinks I'm weak. That's the biggest advantage of all. The council marked out a combat circle, 20 feet across, dirt packed hard from 1,000 previous fights. Ronan stripped off his shirt, revealing a body covered in scars and thick with muscle. He was a warrior who'd killed dozens of opponents. Elena kept her leathers on. She was bruised, exhausted, and scared out of her mind. But she'd learned something over the past weeks in Nightfang. She'd learned how to refuse to stay down. Combat to death or submission, the Council Alpha announced. No interference from outside the circle. No weapons except those carried on your person. Begin when the stone drops. A wolf held a rock over the center of the circle. Elena and Ronan faced each other across the dirt. I'm going to enjoy this, Ronan said. I'm sure you will, Elena replied. Right up until you lose. The stone dropped. Ronan came at her like a landslide, fast, brutal, overwhelming. Elena didn't try to meet his charge. She dove sideways, rolling under his swing and coming up behind him. He spun faster than she expected and backhanded her across the face. Elena went down hard, tasting blood. Get up, always get up. She pushed to her feet as Ronan advanced. This time she didn't dodge. She went low and drove her shoulder into his wounded wrist. He cursed and pulled back, giving her space to breathe. You fight like a coward, Ronan spat. I fight like someone who wants to win, Elena shot back. The fight devolved into a brutal dance. Ronan had strength and experience. Elena had speed and desperation. Every time he landed a hit, she went down. Every time she got back up. After the third knockdown, Vera's voice cut through the crowd. Stay on your feet. He's trying to tire you out. Elena spat blood and circled. Ronan was breathing hard too. His wrist was bleeding badly from where she'd stabbed it, and she'd managed to land a few hits to his ribs and knees. But she was fading. Her vision was blurring, her movements getting slower. One more solid hit, and she'd be done. So she stopped trying to avoid the hits. When Ronan lunged again, Elena stepped into the attack instead of away. His fist connected with her shoulder, agony, but it gave her the opening she needed. She drove both hands into his wounded wrist, yanking it toward her while kicking at the side of his knee. Something in his leg crunched. Ronan stumbled, and Elena used his momentum to throw him off balance. They both went down, but Elena landed on top. She pressed her forearm against his throat, the same way he'd choked her minutes ago, and put all her weight into it. Submit, she gasped. Never, Ronan snarled, trying to throw her off, but his injured wrist and damaged knee had stolen his leverage. Elena pressed harder, her vision tunneling. Submit or die. Your choice. Ronan's face was turning purple. His good hand scrabbled at her arm, trying to break her grip. But she'd fought bears and survived rivers and endured trials that should have killed her. She wasn't letting go. Submit! She screamed. Ronan's hand slapped the ground 3 times, the universal signal of submission. Elena released him immediately and rolled away, gasping. The clearing was silent except for the sound of both fighters trying to breathe. The Council Alpha stepped forward. Ronan Varric has submitted. The challenge is lost. By ancient law, he forfeits his claim to Elena Draven and loses his right to challenge for Nightfang territory. Ronan pushed himself up, his face a mask of humiliation and rage. This isn't over. It is, the silver-haired Alpha said firmly. Furthermore, based on testimony and evidence presented, this council finds you guilty of territorial violation, illegal raids, and conspiracy to murder. You are stripped of your Alpha status and exiled from all recognized Pact territories. You can't, we can, and we have. The head council Alpha's voice was absolute. Any wolf who follows you is also exiled. You have until sunset to leave these territories. If you're found within Pack lands after that, any wolf may kill you on sight. Ronan looked around at the gathered wolves, at his own pack, at the neutral witnesses, at Elena still lying in the dirt. His expression promised violence and revenge, but he turned and walked away, a handful of loyal wolves following. The rest of Ashclaw remained, uncertain and leaderless. The silver-haired Alpha addressed them. Ashclaw Pack will be dissolved. Any wolves wishing to join other packs may petition for acceptance. Those who committed crimes under Ronan's orders will face individual judgment. Elena barely heard the rest. Hands were pulling her up, Kael's hands, she realized. He was saying something, but the words were muffled. Then the clearing erupted in howls, not just Nightfang, but wolves from other packs too, acknowledging what had just happened. A weak outsider had defeated one of the most feared alphas in the mountains using nothing but intelligence, strategy, and the sheer refusal to quit. Vera appeared with water and medical supplies. That was the stupidest, bravest thing I've ever seen. Did it work? Elena's voice was barely a whisper. You just brought down Ronan Varric and saved your pack without Kyle having to fight. Yeah, it worked. Vera's scarred face split in a genuine smile. You might actually survive being part of Nightfang. Over the next few hours, the gathering dispersed. Several former Ashclaw wolves approached Kyle asking to join Nightfang. Lila was among them, her eyes bright with tears. Thank you, she said to Elena. You saved me. You saved all of us. Elena just nodded, too exhausted to form words. The journey back to Nightfang territory was a blur. Elena drifted in and out of consciousness, carried by Kyle for most of the trip. When they finally reached the settlement, he took her directly to his chamber and laid her on the furs. Rest, he ordered. That's not a suggestion. Elena slept for nearly 2 days straight. When she finally woke, her body was a map of bruises, but the worst of the pain had faded to a dull ache. Kale sat nearby, working on repairing a blade. He looked up when she stirred. Welcome back. How long was I out? Almost 48 hours. Vera said you'd wake when you were ready. He set the blade aside. The pack's been asking about you. They want to know when you'll be well enough to attend council meetings. Elena blinked. Council meetings? You're the Alpha's mate. You sit on the council now. Kale's expression was neutral, but she caught a hint of something in his eyes. Though, after what you did at the gathering, most wolves are asking for your opinion on strategy whether you're in council or not. I just did what needed to be done. You challenged an alpha twice your size to single combat and won. That's not just anything. Kyle moved closer. You've changed everything, Elena. The way the pack thinks, the way other territories see us, the way I see leadership. How do you see it now? Like maybe strength isn't just about how hard you can hit. Maybe it's about knowing when to hit, when to talk, when to use your mind instead of your claws. He touched the scar on her shoulder, the mark he'd given her during the bonding ceremony. You've made Nightfang stronger, not despite being different, but because of it. Elena sat up slowly, testing her body's limits. What happened to Ashclaw's territory? The council divided it among neighboring packs. Nightfang got the northern section, doubles our hunting grounds. Kale smiled slightly. Several alphas wanted to know if you'd be willing to advise their packs on legal strategy. That's unexpected. You've earned a reputation. The wolf who thinks 3 moves ahead. The outsider who became more essential than wolves born to the pack. He was quiet for a moment. I claimed you because I needed a mate to satisfy the law. I kept you because you refused to break. But now what? Now I can't imagine Nightfang without you. Can't imagine my life without you. Kale's pale eyes were intense. This bond was supposed to be a transaction. Somewhere along the way, it became real. Elena felt her breath catch. Over the past weeks, she'd been so focused on survival, on proving herself, on fighting external battles that she hadn't stopped to examine what was happening between her and Kyle. But he was right. It had become real. I thought I'd die up here, she said quietly. Thought I'd fail the trials or get killed by the pack or just fade away. Instead you thrived. You found strength no one knew you had. You changed an entire pack's way of thinking. Kyle reached out and took her hand. You're not the weak wolf Iron Hollow rejected anymore. No, Elena agreed, feeling the truth of it settle into her bones. I'm not. Over the next few weeks, life in Nightfang found a new rhythm. Elena healed from her injuries and took her place on the council officially. Her insights on strategy and diplomacy became invaluable as the pack navigated relationships with neighboring territories. The former Ashclaw wolves integrated slowly but steadily. Lila became one of Elena's closest allies, helping bridge the gap between the old Nightfang members and the new arrivals. Elena also began teaching. Young wolves who'd struggled with combat found her methods of using intelligence and strategy instead of brute force. She held sessions on pack law, on reading territorial politics, on finding advantages in unexpected places. Mara attended one session and afterward pulled Elena aside. "You know what's weird? I used to think strength was the only thing that mattered. But watching you, you've made me realize there are different kinds of strong." "You're learning," Elena said. "We all are. That's the point." Mara grinned. "You're making us better." Even Garrett admitted it, and he never admits anything. 3 months after the council gathering, on a cold winter night, Elena stood at the edge of the settlement looking out at the mountains. She'd stood in this same spot the night after her survival trial, terrified and uncertain. Now she felt neither terror nor uncertainty, just a deep sense of belonging. "Thinking about Iron Hollow?" Kael's voice came from behind her. "No, thinking about how far I've come." Elena turned to face him. 5 years I stood at those ceremonies, watching everyone else get chosen. 5 years of being invisible and unwanted. And now? Now I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." She moved closer to him. "This bond we have, it started as necessity, but it's grown into something neither of us expected." Kael pulled her against him, careful of her still healing injuries. "The pack follows you as much as they follow me now, maybe more, in some ways." "They follow us," Elena corrected. "We're strongest together." "Together," Kael agreed. He tilted her face up and kissed her, the first real kiss they'd shared, gentle despite his warrior's roughness. When they pulled apart, Elena saw something in his eyes she'd never expected to find in the brutal mountains of Nightfang territory. Love, respect, partnership. Everything she'd been denied in Iron Hollow, she'd found here among the wolves everyone said were too savage to understand anything but violence. "I have something for you," Kael said. He pulled out a small leather pouch and handed it to her. Elena opened it and found a carved stone pendant, a wolf in mid-howl, intricately detailed. "It's beautiful. It's a leadership token. Every alpha's mate in Nightfang history has worn one." Kael fastened it around her neck. "It means you're not just my mate. You're a leader in your own right." Elena touched the pendant, feeling the weight of it. "I never wanted to be a leader. Most good leaders don't. They just step up when they're needed and refuse to back down when things get hard." Kael smiled. "Sound familiar?" It did. Elena realized that was exactly what she'd been doing since the moment she accepted Kael's claim. Stepping up, refusing to quit, finding ways to survive and then thrive in conditions that should have destroyed her. A howl rose from the settlement behind them, Vera calling the pack together for the evening meal. "Come on," Kael said, taking Elena's hand. "They're waiting for us." They walked back together, the alpha and his mate, equal partners in leading a pack that had learned to value intelligence as much as strength. Elena took her place at the council fire, surrounded by wolves who'd once doubted her and now looked to her for guidance. She caught Sigrid's eye across the flames, and the old female nodded with satisfaction. Later, as the pack settled in for the night and stories were shared around the fire, Elena found herself telling her own story. Not the sanitized version where everything worked out smoothly, but the real one, full of failures and fears and moments where she'd wanted to give up. "The survival trial nearly killed me," she said. "I fell in the river crossing the border. I couldn't trap game or identify half the plants. I got captured by enemy wolves and barely escaped. By every measure, I should have failed." Young wolves listened with rapt attention. But failure isn't about falling down or making mistakes. It's about staying down, giving up, accepting that you're not good enough. Elena looked around at the gathered faces. "I refused to accept it. I got up every time. I learned from every mistake. I used the advantages I had, even when those advantages were just stubbornness and the ability to think through problems." "And now you're here," a young female said, leading beside the alpha. "Now I'm here," Elena agreed. "Not because I was the strongest or the fastest or the most skilled, but because I refused to let anyone, including myself, decide I wasn't worth the effort." The story sharing continued late into the night. When the fire finally burned down and wolves dispersed to their sleeping quarters, Kael and Elena remained. "You give them hope," Kael said quietly. the young ones who aren't natural fighters, the ones who struggle with the traditional trials. You show them there's more than one way to belong. Is that a bad thing? It's the best thing. He stood and offered her his hand. Come on, tomorrow we start planning the spring hunts, and you're going to hate how early council starts. Elena took his hand and let him pull her up. As they walked to their shared chamber, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. From the forgotten wolf at the Iron Hollow ceremonies to the mate of Nightfang's Alpha. From someone who'd never been chosen to someone who'd chosen her own destiny and fought for it with everything she had. She'd survived trials that should have killed her. She'd defeated an Alpha who should have destroyed her. She'd changed a pack that should have rejected her. And she'd done it all not by becoming someone else, but by learning to weaponize exactly who she was. That night, as Elena lay beside Kael in the darkness of their chamber, she heard the mountain wind howling outside. Once that sound had seemed hostile and foreign. Now it felt like home. Thank you, she whispered. Kael stirred. For what? For seeing something in me worth claiming. For believing I could pass the trials. For giving me a chance to prove everyone wrong. You proved yourself, Kael corrected. I just gave you the opportunity. Elena smiled in the darkness. Then thank you for the opportunity. She closed her eyes and let sleep take her, secure in the knowledge that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new trials, new opportunities to prove that strength came in many forms, and that a wolf who'd been unwanted, overlooked, and underestimated could become exactly what everyone needed, if she just refused to stay down long enough. The weak wolf from Iron Hollow was gone forever. In her place stood Elena Draven, Alpha's mate, strategic advisor, and living proof that sometimes the greatest strength wasn't in how hard you could hit. It was in how many times you could get back up, and she would never stop getting up.